The Legion.
Thesis and antithesis.
The Legion is the worst enemy we've ever faced.
We're out of food, we're out of men, and we're out of time.
With Caesar and a new legate here, the Legion's not gonna fall for the same old bag of tricks.
The NCR will find our teeth at their throats in a dozen places.
Conflict is inevitable.
There will be no attrition, no falling back.
Pax Romana.
Only carnage.
Our way. Caesar. The time is fast approaching when my Legion will assault the Great Dam and invade the West.
It's got the momentum of thousands of men behind.
My army has been ready for some time now.
People back home don't know what these young men and women are in.
They know nothing of my tactics.
Our way.
Caesar.
Or the strength of my forces. Mars's eyes are upon you. Do not fail him. Or us.
Caesar's Legion, the boogeyman of the Mojave, is a brutal, imperialistic faction, guided by principles of martial excellence and personal sacrifice. They are fierce and merciless, a massive slave army helmed by a dictator, formerly known as Caesar. From the onset of their arrival in the wastes of the Mojave, the Legion finds its horns locked in conflict with the new California Republic over the lands west of the Colorado River. While the acquisition of Hoover Dam is their current military target, Caesar has his eyes set on what lies just beyond this old world wall, Vegas. As the Courier, we can experience 4 separate outcomes to this conflict based on our backing of one of the 4 main factions vying for power over New Vegas. 3 of 4 of these outcomes oppose the Legion at the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, resulting in a Legion loss. This is, however, based on the Courier and their hero's journey, and not indicative of how the battle will play out should the Courier meet their end in the Good Springs graveyard on that fateful night. When analyzing the evidence, it's clear that Caesar's Legion will win the Second Battle of the Dam without Courier intervention, and continue on to conquer all of New Vegas. There are several factors that support this conclusion, starting with the state of the factions themselves. The new California Republic, by the events of New Vegas, are overstretched, demoralized, and nearly cut off from California after the decimation of their supply line through the divide and the recent disruptions along I-15. In stark contrast to this, Legion forces are unified, highly trained, experienced, and their morale has never been higher, showcased in expressions from legionaries craving a fight with the NCR. As the saying goes, the results speak for themselves. We can see several instances of the Legion's power over the NCR prior to the events of the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Legionaries were able to sneak into NCR-occupied Searchlight completely undetected and unseal nuclear fuel casks from within the town, annihilating the soldiers and removing a key NCR strategic position. This resulted in decreased NCR activity in the area and freed up Cottonwood Cove for occupation. Cottonwood Cove soon becoming a massive staging area and supply line from the fort into the Mojave, a single finger of the Legion reaching across the Colorado. Furthermore, Legion forces led by Dead Sea pressed into the town of Nelson, forcibly removing the NCR, gaining another strategic position along the Colorado and successfully waging a campaign of psychological warfare against one of the NCR's largest military camps in the Mojave, resulting in Camp Forlorn Hope becoming completely demoralized, ill-supplied, and terrified of a Legion invasion. The Legion's campaign of terror doesn't end there, however. A small detachment, led by Frumentatius Vulpus and Colta, managed to push deep into NCR territory and eradicate the entire town of Nipton, causing panic amongst the forces at Mojave Outpost, simultaneously frightening and demoralizing NCR troops all over the Mojave as they received the devastating news. Completely unbeknownst to NCR intelligence, the Legion even managed to establish a raiding camp southwest of the town of Novak, putting them in great advantage for disrupting the only supply lines to Vegas that are left. legionaries from this camp invaded the fortified Ranger Station Charlie, inhabited by the most elite units in the entire NCR, and wiped them out without a single of their own casualties sustained. This raiding party even managed to take one of the Rangers alive, forcing them into a fate worse than death. These are just a few of the many instances of Legion forces overpowering the new California Republic, with events like the Battle of Willow Beach and the Battle of Arizona Spillway proving that operations west of the Colorado mirror those to the east of it, showcasing that Legion victories aren't mere strokes of luck for the armies of Caesar. This can be seen plainly when we analyze the state of the NCR. The only victory they have achieved against the Legion thus far, aside from their decisive victory at the First Battle of Hoover Dam, was the capturing of a Legion Centurion, Silus. Leading up to the second battle for the dam, the Centurion wastes away in his interrogation room, having not revealed any information to his interrogator, nor does he plan to, much to the dismay of the NCR. Without Courier intervention, Silus remains a prisoner of war without ever having given up what he knows, that a Legion spy has infiltrated the ranks of the NCR army and continues to successfully sabotage their operations from Camp McCarran to the horizons of the Mojave Wasteland. The power of the bull and the bear can be seen plainly in their camps and compounds. In Legion territories, vast amounts of legionaries can be observed training, sharpening their blades, honing their aim, and instructing the next generation of legionaries. In contrast, the NCR soldiers are more often seen relaxing, with very few taking it upon themselves to prepare for the war ahead. This speaks to an overall level of preparedness of each army. An extreme example of NCR torpidity can be observed in a group of soldiers stationed at Camp Golf who have remarkably poor combat performance and attitude, the lackadaisical behavior earning them the moniker of misfits. Despite his best efforts, their acting sergeant can't seem to whip them into fighting shape, even failing to instill the slightest amount of military discipline into his troopers. Sergeant McCready ultimately resorts to outsourcing this job to the Courier in hopes that someone, anyone, can instill a fighting spirit in these youths. Examples such as this are not seen in the Legion, as legionaries who fail to perform will not survive their training. It should also be noted in the case of the Misfits that the techniques taught to them are remarkably simple and are foundational basics for any soldier, such as alternating their fire and throwing grenades properly. It's not surprising, however, seeing as how most NCR troopers only receive 2 weeks of basic training before their deployment to the Mojave. Although it's clear and evident that the soldiers of the Legion have vastly superior discipline and martial prowess, strength of the individual is not the deciding factor in war. When it comes to the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, the strategy of each army must be analyzed, as even the strongest army will fail if its strategy is ineffective. This is demonstrated extremely well during the First Battle of Hoover Dam. At the time, the Legion army was helmed by the Malpais legate, Joshua Graham, its first commander. While a strong warrior and a legend to his men, his understanding of strategy applied to smaller, less advanced tribals and not standing armies, with several fortified positions, supply lines, and advanced technologies. While his tactical know-how is mirrored in that of his opponent for this battle, the incompetent and hawkish General Oliver, the Legion had a clear advantage in this surprise assault. An advantage that was soon stripped by the tactical genius of Ranger Hanlon, whose vast experience in warfare against all manner of enemies, from tribal raiders to the armies of the Brotherhood of Steel, paved the way for an NCR victory against the armies of Caesar's Legion. The Malpais legate's strategy was to march his troops along the top of the dam in a triplex axis formation, overwhelming the NCR forces with their speed, tenacity, and sheer numbers. Hanlon crippled this approach by ordering his sharpshooters to take out Legion commanders in the back rows, causing confusion amongst the Legion ranks due to a sudden lack of battlefield leadership. This forced the legate to command his veterans to charge the ridge, where the sharpshooters were located, The NCR troops were ordered to fall to the side and stay out of the way of the Legion forces crossing the dam, allowing Legion veterans to charge into nearby Boulder City, which was rigged to blow with C4 and dynamite. As soon as the bulk of legionaries entered the splash zone, the town went up in smoke, dealing a crushing blow to the Legion and forcing a full rout back to Arizona. This defeat was a wake-up call to Legion leadership and was not taken lightly by Caesar. On the way back from Nevada, Graham met with Caesar, who was enraged at his defeat. Caesar ordered his Praetorian Guard to seize his former legate, who was then covered in pitch, lit ablaze, and thrown into the mouth of the Grand Canyon, showcasing to all in his legion, firsthand, the price of failure. Learning from Graham's folly, legates such as Linnaeus, the monster of the East, adapted the Legion's strategies from the squad level up to counter that of the NCR at every turn. In an ironic twist of fate, during the second battle for Hoover Dam, NCR General Oliver implements the exact strategy that lost the Legion the first battle. As Mr. House comments on, Oliver wants to overshadow Hanlon's strategic genius of the first battle by beating the Legion in a straightforward slugging match, proving to all that his army can beat even the strongest of foes. Oliver's overconfidence and ignorance to his enemy's adaptations have left him complacent. In contrast, the new legate Linnaeus takes a vastly different approach, studying his enemy in deep detail, learning about their mindset, ability, equipment, tactics, and how to exploit them. The NCR infantry digs in and fortifies their position, placing snipers and key lookouts to eliminate the Legion's leadership, just as last time. However, they overlooked a vital component of their position, the dam's intake tunnels, a path straight to their heart. Should the Courier fight for the NCR during this battle, they have the option to eliminate all of the legionaries in the intake tunnels by activating them. However, it appears that the military isn't aware of their presence there, and only a single engineer knows about these tunnels. Should the Courier decide to not activate them, they remain dormant in every possible outcome, showing that the NCR intelligence did indeed overlook this detail entirely. These intake tunnels allowed the Legion to find their way into the dam's interior, surpassing the front line and surprising the NCR from their rear flank, completely disrupting any chances of reinforcing the dam top. Should the Courier side with the Legion, they even have the opportunity to open these tunnels, to allow for legionaries to reinforce the dam top, allocating enough manpower to totally overrun the snipers' nests and bypass their frontline fortifications. In this scenario, NCR forces are locked into a pincer maneuver with nowhere to retreat, as even retreating from the dam top itself is interrupted by the Great Khan reinforcements arriving to the rear of the dam. Having learned from Graham's mistakes, Legion forces are no longer grouped by rank, such as with the previously utilized triplex axis formation. They are now arranged in small squad fire teams, each fire team comprised of various ranks, including prime and veteran legionaries, all led by a senior officer, such as a Centurion. Having multiple legionaries of higher rank allows for each fire team to maintain its combat effectiveness in the event a senior officer is dispatched and can no longer issue commands. This, in combination with the Legion's use of advanced ballistic firearms, accounts for and removes its previous shortcomings. It's important to note that during the second battle of Hoover Dam, several other areas of the Mojave come under fire from Legion forces and auxiliaries. As previously stated, the Great Khans attacked the NCR's rear flank at the dam top, preventing any reinforcements coming through the nearby Boulder City or Ranger Station Alpha. Camp Forlorn Hope is completely overrun by the Legion and likely erased to the last man. Camp Golf also comes under attack, although manages to beat the Legion off their doorstep, likely thanks to the heavy veteran Ranger presence there. Both of these locations are meant to reinforce the dam with troops and supplies. However, the attacks completely cut off their ability to reinforce the dam during the battle itself. Camp McCarran gets assaulted by the Fiends, the monorail is destroyed, preventing the camp from resupplying the strip, and the Strip is attacked by the Omertas, causing complete chaos along the breadth of the Mojave. With the Legion's teeth at their throat in 1,000 places, and their fortified strategic position sinking by the minute, the NCR's defeat is all but assured. All that's left is the final room, General Oliver's compound. The bodies of countless legionaries litter the entrance, speaking to its dangers and to the effectiveness of Oliver's guard detail. However, while it is massively fortified and booby-trapped to the teeth, it would only be a matter of time before the Legion reached Oliver. By nature, the Legion achieves its goals at any cost, including that of human life, and would send wave after wave of troops in here until nothing and no one stood between Linnaeus and Oliver. A tactic that the NCR is all too familiar with, having used the same methods to overpower the better trained, equipped, and fortified forces of the Brotherhood of Steel at Helios 1. It's certain that the Legion would have plenty of troops to spare in order to accomplish this task as well, as even when the Courier doesn't side with them and the Legion takes heavy losses, they are shown to have plenty of reserve forces to halt the Courier's advance into Linnaeus' camp. Furthermore, there is no evidence suggesting that they would achieve anything other than a decisive victory in this battle. It is likely that a significant amount of their casualties would come from clearing Oliver's compound and battling against his personal guard of armored heavy troopers and veteran rangers in this small, enclosed space. But seeing as how Oliver does not retreat from here, despite having the means, the battle would ultimately end with General Oliver decorating a cross. Suffice to say, a Legion victory is all but assured as it stands now. Should the Courier decide to align with them and assist with the myriad of tasks that bolsters the Legion's strength, such as allying with the Boomers and with the Enclave remnants, dispatching President Kimball, fixing the Legion's artillery weapon and destroying the Securitrons under the fort, then the Legion, who are already a force to be reckoned with, will become truly unstoppable. The NCR, Caesar's Legion, two diametrically opposed juggernauts vying for control over the bombed-out ruins of the American Southwest. Their militaries, endlessly forging paths for their interests, meet at a critical junction just east of Las Vegas. It's here at Hoover Dam where the two armies would meet for the first time, with the NCR claiming victory over their foe. Confident enough to rest on their laurels, the NCR fortified their positions along the Colorado River, returning to business as usual. Caesar, on the other hand, did not take this defeat lightly and began a mass restructuring of his army to meet the challenge the Republic posed. With a new legate in place and a new battle strategy, the Legion would launch a series of counterattacks, pushing the NCR entirely off the eastern bank of the river. With this natural border in place, the factions maintained a relative stalemate until 2281, where their armies would meet under the Nevada sun once again. The two nations represent opposite sides of the same coin, thesis and antithesis, lacking a common ground for which they can coexist. The new California Republic's ideals of democracy, equality, and civility have paved the way for a safe and welcoming nation, but quickly led the Republic to internal corruption, debasement, and imperialism. With former general and now president of the NCR, Aaron Kimball, having achieved war hero status after massacring the tribes of the Sierra Nevadas and Bullhead City. Witnessing the inherent flaws in the NCR from an early age, the once citizen of the Republic, Caesar, formed his Legion in opposite to their ideals. Caesar's Legion was, from the start, a nationalist, imperialist, totalitarian, homogenous nation, putting a person's utility to the state above that of their personal liberties. In doing so, Caesar has maintained power over his subjects and nearly eliminated all corruption amongst his Legion. Utilizing those under his rule to their full potential has led to a highly elite and specialized military, the likes of which the Wasteland has never seen. Each army is organized into a specialized rank and file to fulfill their logistical needs. The NCR utilizes a ranking structure of pre-war America, separating its ranks into the categories of enlisted troopers, non-commissioned officers, and commissioned officers. While the NCRA is largely meritocratic, there have also been some documented cases of soldiers in the NCR receiving and maintaining their rank due to their connections in the government. A prime example is General Oliver, who was stated to only have his rank by account of his connection to President Kimball, and not due to his accomplishments or strategic ability, which has been heavily criticized as lacking by friends of the Republic and foes alike. The Legion, on the other hand, is a strict meritocracy, where promotions only occur through an individual's achievements and bravery in battle. While gaining Caesar's favor may allow a legionary to bypass the traditional chain of promotions, doing so is incredibly difficult and requires an immense feat. Such as in the case of Vulpes Inculta, who capitalized on enemies' oversight by breaking ranks and leading his legionaries through a hole in their defenses, an action which, under normal circumstances, would have landed him on a cross, but due to his actions leading to victory over the enemy, landed him on Caesar's good side instead. After gaining his lord's favor, Vulpes was spared crucifixion, and instead promoted to the ranks of frumentarii. In order to capitalize on recruitment, the minimum age for enlistment into the NCR Army is 16 years old, with very few ever volunteering at this age. By the conflict of 2281, the majority of the NCR infantry is conscripted into the military, typically from farming or ranching communities, and with a near even split between male and female troopers. After they swear into service, the recruit is then sent to boot camp for 2 weeks, where they learn basic military skills before deploying. Due to the majority of recruits growing up farming and ranching, most already know their way around a firearm, and likely spend their time learning other military basics, like marching and small unit tactics. When the Legion needs to bolster their ranks, they do so by 2 methods of action. The first and most abundant is through the conquering and assimilation of tribals into Legion ranks. The second is through the mechanism of forced breeding to create generations of soldiers growing up knowing only the art of war. Due to Caesar's emphasis on utility, men and women are separated into delineated roles, with men making 100% of the Legion's fighting force, and women filling in various support roles that keep them out of the fighting, including religious figures such as priestesses. Legion training is intense and brutal, with their conditioning routines having been compared by Colonel Moore as on par with, if not greater than that of NCR Rangers, a branch which Colonel Moore had personally served in, leading to legionaries who are extremely tough, fast, and agile. Recruits are also trained to ignore pain and follow their orders to the letter, whether that's rushing a position under fire with a dull machete as their only weapon, or ending their own life to avoid capture. Their ferocity is so intense that the aforementioned Colonel Moore has her troops training to fight bigger and stronger opponents, in addition to strict orders to fight the Legion at a distance, no matter the circumstance. While the average NCR recruit trains for only 2 weeks before a deployment, where they go on to largely patrol and wait for the next conflict, a legionary's training is non-stop. In the meat grinder that is Caesar's Legion, one cannot afford to fall behind. This endless training leads to a culture where true battles become breaks in training, allowing legionaries a brief respite in order to test their skills against an adversary. The bulk of the NCR infantry is equipped with minimal equipment, including desert fatigues, an armored ballistic vest, likely steel, and a helmet, with standard-issue pre-war mass-produced service rifles chambered in 5.56 and a pistol sidearm chambered in 9mm. While this is standard issue for all ranks up to colonel, many units away from the front lines use various assortments of lower-tier guns like 9mm submachine guns, varmint rifles, caravan shotguns, and more. It's also not uncommon for NCR troops to carry a combat knife for close-quarter encounters. The Legion infantry is equipped with the most basic of gear, consisting of Legion fatigues and pre-war sporting equipment, including leather football pads and catcher vests, as well as football and baseball helmets. Due to the meritocratic nature of the Legion, the higher a legionary's rank, the more gear and better weapons they will acquire, with the previously mentioned equipment acting as the foundational protective gear. As a legionary climbs the ladder to veteran, they add shin guards and an arm guard to this ensemble, with added nails protruding from their pauldrons to provide that extra damage to anyone who gets too close. Once a legionary reaches the rank of Centurion, they receive the best armor the Legion can offer, with most opting for patchwork armor forged in the fires of their conquests, and others opting for something a little more protective in the visage of their legate. With added accomplishments comes better firepower. Recruit legionaries are often seen wielding basic firearms and melee weapons like varmint rifles, makeshift spears, and machetes, while veterans can be seen wielding power fists and carbines. While the Legion is heavily criticized for their use of such rudimentary arms and armor, it's not without purpose. A large part of the Legion's strategy involves overwhelming fortified positions and dismantling them from within. Having troops in lighter armor who can close the distance on a position quickly and terrify their enemy by chopping into them goes a long way to not only secure objectives, but strip away any sense of comfort a trooper might have in their position at a distance, a tactic which has been used to great effect against the NCR. The NCR and Legion share a similar squad size and spread, with each squad composed of 4 troops, typically led by a non-commissioned officer or a decanus in the case of the Legion. NCR weapon spread is pretty uniform on the front lines, with most patrolling squads all wielding service rifles and standard issue equipment. Legion patrol squads have more diverse spread to cover various scenarios. Squads of recruits are often seen wielding machetes, spears, pistols, and rifles, and veteran squads seen wielding hunting rifles, shotguns, and power fists, allowing them to combat foes at long, medium, and short ranges. During the final battle for Hoover Dam, Legion squads are led by a Centurion, typically wielding a marksmanship carbine or squad automatic rifle. NCR squads stay relatively the same during this battle, with their change in equipment reflecting more long-distance options, such as sniper rifles. Amongst the rank and file of each military are subdivisions of specialty units. For the NCR, one of these specialty units are the 1st Recon Sharpshooters. Distinguished by their red berets, they are primarily responsible for reconnaissance and the elimination of high-profile targets. Although it isn't uncommon to see them attached to units to provide fire support, such in the case of the Bitter Springs massacre. The NCR also boasts a division of heavy troopers who utilize salvage power armor and heavy weapons from the NCR's war with the Brotherhood of Steel. Although the salvage power armor is slow and clunky due to having their servos ripped out, the heavy troopers are capable of absorbing large amounts of small arms fire. Combined with their common use of miniguns and incinerators, these units make for truly deadly enemies. Due to their limited numbers, heavy troopers typically act as guards for high-profile leaders or at positions of strategic importance. In addition to this, the NCR also utilizes the skills of the NCR Rangers, who work in tandem with but are not directly under the command of the Army. The New California Republic Rangers act as scouts and light infantry. They most commonly are found in outposts, typically keeping watch over a troublesome faction, or acting as the first line of defense against a Legion invasion. Rangers are elite, akin to pre-war special forces, and are often sent on dangerous operations behind enemy lines. After 20 years of dedicated service, a Ranger will earn the designation of Veteran, allowing them to don the iconic black armor and Ranger Sequoia. Veteran Rangers are the best of the best and are chosen for the most dangerous missions, including assassinations of highly lethal targets. Their prowess is so great that even President Kimball chose them to protect him over the NCR's own powered armor units. The Legion also utilize a wide variety of specialized roles, with the most notorious among them being the Frumentarii. This unit acts as the Legion's eyes and ears, and they are everywhere. The Frumentarii are handpicked by Caesar and are heavily trained in espionage for infiltration missions. Disguised as caravanners, soldiers, and more, the Frumentarii's goal is not only collecting valuable intel for Caesar, but also to disrupt and destabilize the enemies of the Legion, a task that is handled with extreme efficiency. It is among the rank of the Frumentarii that one typically is chosen for assassination missions, such in the case of dispatching President Kimball. That said, if a target is dangerous enough, a squad may be hand-selected to carry out the mission instead. These hit squads will typically include Centurions, Vexillarius, and Praetorians. The Praetorian is another special role within the Legion. Praetorians are brutal, merciless conquerors, handpicked by Caesar to join his personal guard. One must have earned the right to be a Centurion before they qualify for selection, and in order to pass the selection process, they must fight a current Praetorian to the death with their bare hands. Due to their specialization in hand-to-hand combat and their elite skill, Praetorians are often found guarding important figures within the Legion, such as Legatus Lanius and Caesar himself, with the odd occurrence that one is selected for an assassination mission. The tactics of the two factions vary wildly in their scope, purpose, and execution. In the field, the NCRA prioritizes the fortification of large forts and compounds from which to conduct operations in the surrounding area. By utilizing communication with the Ranger outposts dotted around the Mojave, the Army aims to grasp real-time movements occurring in the region. Against an enemy like the Legion, accurate intel is absolutely vital, and distance between the trooper and the oncoming Legion forces is crucial. Most NCR encampments accomplish this by erecting towers and snipers' nests in order to detect and engage any enemies as they approach a compound, allowing for the troopers to mobilize by the time an assault force arrives. The NCR's strength lies in their mass-scale assault capabilities, as can be seen with the raid on Helios 1 that decimated the Mojave chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel. The more hands they have on deck, the greater their chances for success. The Legion, on the other hand, has several additional tactics that they utilize. The Legion's primary combat strategy involves overwhelming their enemies with numbers and brutality, either scaring their enemies into freezing, fleeing, or surrendering. They also primarily rely on raids to weaken their enemy and their resolve prior to launching a full-scale combat operation. Due to the nature of this style of combat, many Legion encampments are minimalist and nomadic, lacking permanent walls or gates, and are comprised mostly of tents, sleeping bags, and whatever buildings were there when they arrived. While the Legion is an immensely strong combat force, they also excel in subversive tactics, whittling down their opponents little by little until they break from within. With a vast network of spies and counterintelligence agents, the Legion is easily able to infiltrate groups, sabotage them, or convince them to join their cause. A clear example can be noted with Captain Curtis, a Frumentarius who gained a high position within the NCR Military and actively sabotages their operations by providing the Legion with classified intel. Or with Carl, a Frumentarius emissary who convinced the Great Khans to ally with the Legion for the upcoming Battle of Hoover Dam. The Legion also deploys shady combat tactics, such in the case of using young ones to lure the enemy into dropping their guard before getting blown back by explosives, positioning mines under injured troopers to draw their comrades into an equally terrible fate, decimating Ranger outposts and towns in a brutalist fashion deep within enemy territory, frightening and demoralizing the opposing side. As the conflict drags on, this campaign of terror takes its toll on the soldiers involved, leading to an increased need for medical practitioners. The NCR employs field doctors at their camps to treat the wounded. These doctors use modern medical tools, medicines, practices, and procedures in order to save the lives of those serving. In some cases, such as the refugee camp at Bitter Springs, NCR doctors may even assist with treating psychological conditions in their patients, like post-traumatic stress disorder. The Legion also employs doctors, however, they aren't medical doctors in the traditional sense like you see with the NCR or with the followers of the Apocalypse. These doctors are more accurately described as herbalists. While largely ignorant of modern medicinal practices, the Legion does have extensive knowledge of tribal remedies that provide benefits equal to, if not surpassing that of pre-war chems. Hydra can cure broken limbs, bitter drink will cure minor injuries in a short period of time, and healing poultice will do both efficiently and quickly. When a legionary has gained Caesar's favor, he may even allow them to be treated with his autodoc, a powerful gift in a society that shuns modern medical practices. In order to provide these remedies to those in need, each faction will have to get the materials to the front lines via supply chains. Each faction is supplied from their respective nations, with the NCRs coming from California and the Legions coming from Arizona. After the Battle of Willow Beach and Arizona Spillway, where the Legion pushed the NCR west of the Colorado, the Legion has maintained a stable, uninterrupted supply route to the fort through this conflict. The same can't be said for the NCR. Due to the unforeseen destruction at the Divide, one of the two supply lines into the Mojave from California were completely cut off, forcing the NCR to push all of their supplies through the Long 15. And with all the wasteland horrors actively preying on this stretch of road, not to mention the Legion raids on supply caravans, several supply interruptions have occurred, leading to minicamps going without food, water, ammunition, medicine, and reinforcements. While the New California Republic boasts divisions of mechanized units that could easily navigate this supply issue, they are scantily utilized due to several factors. A large one for the mechanized cavalry and supply division is a lack of parts, mainly tires and other degradable necessities. This greatly limits their ability to expand the division and ensures that each and every truck is highly valuable as they are near irreplaceable. This is also why the NCR doesn't utilize their air force outside of special operations. Not only is their supply of vertibirds extremely limited, But due to an inability to produce these aircrafts on a significant scale, the value of every vertibird is too high to warrant the risk of one being shot out of the air. This is likely why they are being held in reserve at the Long 15. Both factions also utilize artillery cannons at the final battle of Hoover Dam. Due to their limited use and lack of specific unit to operate them, it may be that these are also an extremely rare and hard to reproduce weapon. In fact, Legion forces aren't even able to use their respective cannon unless they locate a replacement firing mechanism for it, the only known one to exist in the Mojave having been locked tightly within the walls of Nellis Air Force Base. Behind a tribe of recluses with missile launchers, a 12-foot tall fence with a locked gate, and an endless artillery bombardment. Needless to say, the firing mechanism will not be able to be obtained without a significant effort. The Legion does not utilize vehicles at all. It's often assumed that this is because the Legion is anti-technology, but that is not the case. We can see through the Legion's use of artillery and attempted purchase of energy weapons from the Van Graffs that they are not averse to technology in this sense. Caesar values the human sacrifice as a moral virtue, and as such doesn't want his soldiers to be replaced with robots, even if it means he will win a conflict. To Caesar, it's not a true victory unless it's achieved through blood. It may be that there are not as many salvageable vehicles in the Southwest as there are on the West Coast, or it may be that Caesar doesn't feel like he needs them, opting instead to have his soldiers force march in order to sharpen their resolve. A common point of contention has always been centered around the amount of soldiers each faction has in the Mojave at the time of the conflict, with many arguing that the NCR has a tiny fraction of their military in the Mojave campaign and that the Legion has all of their forces actively in the region, further leading them to believe that if the NCR deployed their full military, they would crush the Legion. Or even if the Legion does win the battle for the dam, they wouldn't be able to invade the NCR due to the majority of the NCR army existing in the Republic's core territory. While a hopeful sentiment, we can see that this estimate is hopelessly misplaced. Prior to the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, the NCR had its veteran rangers pulled back on assignment, and their heavy troopers protecting the lands of the Brahmin barons that lined their pockets. But they aren't the only ones who are off the front lines. Before the Second Battle, the Legion veterans had not even arrived in the region from the east yet. Following behind them was Legatus Lanius, who had his own army that he brought with him. Considering the NCR has to conscript as heavily as they are showcases that they are in desperate need for manpower, and implies that a sizable chunk of their force is tied up in the Mojave campaign, as it would only take a tiny fraction of an entire army to maintain peace along the NCR's borders, with the core territory kept peaceful by their civilian police force. In addition to this, there aren't any other wars that the NCR are actively engaged in, with the exception of the final embers of their war with the Brotherhood of Steel. A war, mind you, that occurred over the course of decades prior to encountering Caesar's Legion, and dealt a massive blow to the NCR's economy, population, and military power. Furthermore, since the president himself is so heavily invested into this admittedly unpopular campaign, it lends even more credence to the NCR pulling the majority of their forces for this conflict. Kimball can't afford to lose this war, lest he lose his next election. Regardless of how many troops are in the region prior to the Second Battle for Hoover Dam, it's clear that the militaries on both sides commit all available forces to fight, with the NCR pulling both their heavy troops and veteran rangers into the conflict, and the Legion committing enough forces that Lanius is worried about instability arising in the east due to manpower pulled for this campaign. Should we estimate, the NCR has 2 colonels and a single general in the Mojave. A colonel typically oversees up to 5,000 soldiers each, with a 4-star general commanding all troops and operations that fall within their geographical area, leading to a combined infantry force of 10,000 by the events of the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. As for the Legion, legates historically command a legion of 5,000 men, in addition to their servants. With a single legate at the battle and at least 1 legion under Caesar's command at the fort, it's safe to assume that the militaries on both sides have near equal combat numbers of 10,000 infantry each, not including the Legion's Great Khan auxiliaries and the NCR's Rangers. During the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, the NCR commits one of their brigades to the defense of the dam, while the other defends their positions in the Mojave, positions which come under attack from Legion forces and allies alike, such as the Fiends who attack Camp McCarran and the Omertas who attack the Strip. It's likely Caesar keeps several reserves at the fort as well in order to reinforce the dam, while the NCR reserves would be kept within the dam as part of General Oliver's defensive strategy. allowing troopers to reinforce their positions throughout the power plant. When the smoke clears, there can only be one victor, and depending on your actions, Courier, will depend on which direction the scales will tip, deciding once and for all which banner will shadow the Mojave for decades to come. Caesar's Legion, the worst enemy one can face in the wasteland. Their sheer size and brutality crushes even the mightiest of warriors under their boot. This perpetual motion machine of blood, guts, and savagery blazed an empire out of the American Southwest, encompassing all of what was once Arizona and New Mexico, with large parts of Colorado and Utah in tow. But how did such a ruthless army arise in the desolate wastes of post-nuclear annihilation? It all began when a tribe of survivors ransomed the wrong man. Nearly 2 centuries following the Great War, a young man by the name of Edward Sallow and a group of his fellow scholars would depart the ruins of Los Angeles, making a trek out to the Grand Canyon in order to establish contact with as well as record the languages used by the tribes inhabiting the area. Upon their arrival, the group's first contact was with the tribe known as the Blackfoot. Now, it should be noted that the Blackfoot tribe encountered in the Grand Canyon was formed in the post-war and bears no relation to the historical Blackfoot tribe of Native Americans from the Alberta and Montana regions of North America. Now with that said, let's continue. The Blackfoot tribe turned out to be one of the many groups that inhabited this small slice of Arizona paradise. While you would think this would have led them to lives of peace and tranquility, they were anything but peaceful. Having found themselves at war with 7 other tribes, things were not looking up for the Blackfoot. While communications between Sallow's group and the tribe were friendly at first, they quickly soured, likely due to a mistranslation on the part of Joshua Graham, the party's interpreter.
No, not then. Back then he was just Edward. Smart man. Young, but we all were. We thought we could hike into the Grand Canyon and talk to Blackfoots. We did. And the Blackfoots were friendly enough at first. But eventually... I've thought back to that day so many times. I must have mistranslated. Something must have been mixed up, because the Blackfoots decided we weren't going to leave. The rest is history, assuming Edward hasn't changed it.
Following this downturn on their journey, Sallow and his crew, including Graham, were seized and held prisoner while the tribe attempted to hold them for ransom to an unknown third party. It was in this period of captivity that the dire state of the tribe would reveal itself.
When I was 20, the followers sent me east to Grand Canyon. It was my first expedition. Just me and a physician named Calhoun. As an anthropologist and linguist, my assignment was to learn the dialects of the Grand Canyon tribes. What a fucking waste of time. Anyway, we met up with a Mormon missionary who already knew a bunch of dialects. Joshua Graham. He was supposed to teach me. But before that went too far, the Blackfoot tribe captured us to hold us for ransom. They were a backward bunch. But the real problem was, they didn't know how to fight. The Blackfoot were at war with 7 other tribes, each just as pissant as they were. But outnumbered like that, they weren't going to last long. It's one thing to be taken hostage, another to be lashed to a sinking ship. So over Calhoun's objections, I decided to take certain steps.
The Blackfoot just so happened to be at war with not 1, not 2, but 7 other tribes. Sallow quickly took notice of the tribe's unfortunate circumstances, realizing that he would be killed alongside the tribe if they lost these wars, developed a plan to save himself. A plan that, when implemented, would set in sequence a chain of events that would change the landscape of the wasteland forever. Sallow realized that the Blackfoot were inept in warfare. They had guns, but could hardly use them. They had men, but could not properly implement them. They were a sinking ship and quickly running out of time. Against the wishes of his travel companion, Bill Calhoun, Sallow proposed knowledge to the tribe in exchange for his freedom. With the tribe amenable to this proposal, Sallow began instructing them in basic firearm operations.
I taught them how to use the guns they already had, how to strip and clean them, how to breathe when pulling a trigger, how to reload ammunition. They looked at me like I was some kind of a sorcerer. So I taught them how to make explosives and started drilling them on small unit tactics. If there's anything I learned as a follower of the apocalypse, it's that there's a lot of good information in old books.
Having been named acting war chief by the tribe, it wasn't long before Silo led the Blackfoot into battle. His first target, a nearby tribe known as the Ridgers, the weakest enemy of the Blackfoot. With the added training and explosives, the tribe would steamroll the Ridgers, pressing them to the point of defeat. They were outgunned and outmanned, yet refused to surrender. Upon hearing this, Silo ordered the execution of the entire tribe. Men, women, even the young ones. It was in this moment that the landscape of warfare for these tribes would be irrevocably changed, birthing an entirely new beast. After the eradication of the Ridgers, Salo would direct his attention to the tribe's next weakest enemy, the Kaibabs. With their confidence bolstered from their recent victory, the Blackfoot would fight valiantly against the tribe, and likewise surround them. However, when the Kaibabs refused to surrender despite their worsening situation, Salo would change his tactics.
Divide et impera, divide and conquer. I led the Blackfoot against the Ridgers, their weakest enemy. When they refused to surrender, I ordered every man, woman, and child killed. When next we surrounded the Kaibabs, and they likewise refused, I took one of their envoys to the Ridgers' village and showed him the corpse piles. This was new for the tribes, you see. They played at war, raiding each other, a little and pillage here, a little ransoming there. I showed them total warfare. Like I said, there's a lot you can learn from old books.
Horrified at what lay before them, the Kaibabs caved and turned over their arms to the Blackfoot. Upon their humiliating surrender, the survivors would be forcibly integrated into the Blackfoot tribe, and the cycle would begin anew, with the conquering of the Fredonians.
Kaibabs joined me, and the Fredonians after that. All the pissant tribes with names that should be forgotten.
One by one, the tribes of the Grand Canyon fell to the growing power of Salo's army. Soon, the entirety of the canyon and its surrounding area was his. While Salo had earned the freedom of himself and his compatriots while simultaneously growing into an immensely wealthy and powerful warlord, he faced a new worrisome concern. The assimilation of the various tribes into one nation was not going smoothly. The various tribal identities and customs clashed, resulting in infighting amongst the band. Salo was keenly aware that if his conquests were to continue, he would need to destroy the series of unique identities plaguing the tribe and unite everyone under a single monolithic culture, and he knew just how to achieve this. During his time as warlord of the Blackfoot tribe, Salo became obsessed with two pre-war texts whose influence would not only shape his tactics as a leader, but his vision as a dictator. These two texts are known as The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire and Commentarii de Bello Gallico, the former outlining the history, culture, and politics of the Romans, and the latter depicting Julius Caesar's personal commentaries of his conquest of Gaul, what is now modern-day France. Salo recognized that Roman culture was so foreign and removed from the cultural context that he and the tribes found themselves in, that it would create the perfect paradigm shift for long-term unification. He crowned himself Caesar and reformatted his band of conquered tribes into what is now known as the Legion, stripping them from their heritage, language, and culture, replacing it with trappings of their imperial Roman equivalents. Soon the tribes would learn Latin, worship Mars, and fashion themselves in crimson. With this new vision realized and set into motion, Salo no longer had use for the others that he originally journeyed here with. He sent Calhoun back to his home deep in NCR territory with a message that he is not to be interfered with. As for the interpreter Joshua Graham, well, his prowess as a warrior and knowledge of dialects made him invaluable to Caesar. Graham was named the first legatus of the Legion and would be primarily responsible for leading their troops into battle. Following their establishment in Arizona, Caesar's Legion would continue on to conquer countless tribes so thoroughly that no record of their origins currently exists. Only a few survived, either through legend, recollection from those that were born into the tribe, or from what they left behind. Among the first of the tribes to be contacted following the formation of the Legion were those of the Painted Rock tribe, thought to have hailed from the Painted Hills of Arizona. Legionaries that have come from this tribe are some of the oldest and most experienced, renowned for their battle prowess even amongst the likes of the elite NCR Rangers.
Word is that the Legion's old-timers have shown up. Caesar's veterans from the Red Oaky Centurion and what was the Painted Rock tribe. They're the best of the best and the baddest of the bad. Short of a Centurion or Praetorian, they don't come any tougher. You come across a pack of them, weigh your options carefully.
The fate of the Painted Rock tribe was clearly assimilation. However, their skill and prowess allowed their legacy to be one of the few who survived Legion assimilation. Two other notable tribes whose names have not yet been forgotten to history are those of the Sundog tribe and the Twin Mothers. In the event of the Sundogs, their annihilation was so complete that their legacy only survives through the legionary who personally conquered them, a deconist by the name of Dead Sea. Nothing survives of the tribe beyond that. Not their size, location, language, nothing. They exist merely as a checked box on Dead Sea's path to Centurion. As for the Twin Mothers, their legacy survives in more than just name, but also in what they gave to the Legion, a healing concoction by the name of Bitter Drink. On long marches across the treacherous expanse of the wasteland, legionaries would forage the numerous Xander roots and Brock flowers that dot their path, utilizing these plants to create another form of healing powder to keep their wounded on the march. This drink is so horrifically bitter that in order to effectively consume it, a person would have to drink it all in one shot, as their stomach will reject it on the second gulp. The Twin Mothers were all about lessons, and this one perfectly encapsulates duality of healing the wound, but leaving the bitter pain that caused it. The story of the Twin Mothers is survived through a former frumentari of Caesar's Legion, who carries with him many tales of tribes he witnessed meet their end, including the tale of his own tribe. In the early days of Caesar's expansion, the Twisted Hares had formed a treaty with the Legion. The tribe's sheer size of territory and expertise in the wilderness made them the perfect advanced scouts, and Caesar would soon utilize them to conduct recon, searching for new tribes to assimilate. It's unclear as to how long the Twisted Hares benefited from this agreement, but what is clear is that Caesar never intended for it to be a permanent arrangement. In the town of Dry Wells, Caesar and the head of his frumentari, Vulpes and Colta, would sit down once again with the Twisted Hares, only this time they did not meet as equals. With the usefulness of the tribe having run its course, Caesar decided that they would be best served as fresh recruits in his legion. He proceeded to break their alliance, his eyes set on conquest.
They didn't know what the braids meant, the mark of my tribe, before Caesar came. Before Vulpes came for them at Dry Wells. There was death in that meeting, even while Vulpes smiled, asked for our help against the other tribes. All the while, they were looking to cast our history on the fire, and did. Another tribe, consumed by the bull. Nothing left.
The Twisted Hares soon became another number marked down in the ledger of the Legion's expansion, the detesters of which having been crucified along the remnants of Interstate 40, the lifeline to the east, acting as a reminder to those conquered of the fate that befalls those who resist. With Legion territory growing increasingly massive by the day, it wouldn't be long before they encountered tribes of a higher caliber than those they had previously conquered. One such tribe even produced the most brutal and efficient warrior the Legion has ever encountered. This notable tribe was once known as a tribe of the Arizona. The Hydebarks are rather unimpressive in of themselves, their largest praise coming from their aforementioned warrior. Standing 7 feet 1 inch tall and said to be maniacal in battle, this warrior would single-handedly defeat entire Legion patrols without breaking a sweat. Once the Legion had surrounded the Hydebarks and their chieftain agreed to surrender, it's said this warrior went insane with rage, attacking the members of his own tribe. In an onslaught that would strike fear into even the hardiest of wastelanders, the warrior slaughtered 15 members of his own tribe before he was eventually brought down. Impressed by this display of brutality, among other factors, Caesar had the man tended to, and once he awoke, Caesar extended him an offer to join the Legion.
I had him tended to. He was maimed, most of his face torn off. It was days before he regained consciousness. When he did, I went to his bedside and showed him the helmet I'd had forged to cover his face. I said he could have it if he'd fight for me. He accepted, on condition that he be allowed to kill the surviving males of his tribe. I said, make it the adult males, and you have a deal.
And thus, a legend was born. Linnaeus, the monster of the East. Following the conquest of the Hydebarks, Linnaeus would rise quickly to attain the position of legatus, allowing him to lead entire armies in Caesar's name. The Legion, after suffering a humiliating defeat against the new California Republic at the First Battle for Hoover Dam, and subsequently losing the leadership of their first legatus, Joshua Graham, would find itself desperate for both new leadership and also increased manpower. By this point, the Legion had been conquering for roughly 30 years and had pacified the majority of the American Southwest. The only place left to go was east. With a vast swath of troops under his command, Legate Linnaeus would launch a fierce campaign into the heart of Colorado, conquering any tribe that dared to stand in his way. It was here where the might of the Legion would encounter the straw that nearly broke its back. On the outskirts of Denver, Linnaeus' forces would encounter a tribe of dog tamers known as the Hangdogs. The tribe had formed a bond with the mongrels that overflowed from the ruins of Denver, a bond so strong that the tribe came to view the dogs as their spirit animals and lifelong companions. By the time the Legion had reached the city, they were overstretched from years of campaign and suffered heavily from a lack of food, water, and tribals to replenish their ranks. It wasn't the might of the Hangdogs that nearly defeated the Legion, but rather the logistical nightmare that they found themselves in. The tribe held out for a considerable time against Legion forces, so long in fact that it would change Linnaeus' approach to battle irrevocably.
I've been around dogs all my life. They're my life. Always were, all the way back when I was a tribal. One of the hangdogs outside Denver. Dogs roamed that city. Our tribe made peace with them, thought they were our spirit animals. Helped us hunt, provided for us in some lean times. Then the Legion came. Good thing, too. Stronger now. Don't need those beliefs anymore.
The tribe would survive in a way, however, as Caesar saw it useful to integrate dogs with professional trainers into his ranks. While the remainder of their cultural practices were erased, they were one of the lucky few to maintain some modicum of their identity following assimilation. While these are the only tribes we know of whose names have contributed to their ranks or been eradicated entirely, several other tribes have been affected by their proxies, and in some cases eradicated on their behalf. In the heart of Zion Valley, 3 tribes are locked in a power struggle over the region. The Dead Horses, a tribe of warriors and hunters led by Joshua Graham, after he miraculously survived his execution by Caesar. The Sorrows, led by Joshua's friend and fellow New Canaanite Daniel. And finally, the Whitelegs, a proxy of the Legion, currently led by Salt Upon Wounds, their acting war chief. Having been trained in the art of war by the former Frumentari, known as Ulysses, the Whitelegs would evolve from a meager raiding band based out of the Great Salt Lake to a devastating force of nature, much like the Blackfoot tribe from all those years ago. The only difference being, Caesar did not want the Whitelegs for his legion. He merely sought to use them to strike at his old friend and hit him where it hurt most, Graham's home of New Canaan. Luckily for Caesar, this wouldn't be too high of an ask, as the Whitelegs were already bitter rivals with the settlement, often fighting over territory and salvage. With their newfound weapons and training, the scales would finally tip in their favor. One night, under the cover of darkness, while Graham and others of the city's defenders were away, the Whitelegs would make their move. With Ulysses at their front, the tribe sacked the town, trapping and burning those in buildings while gunning down the rest. Once the flames died down, the tribe would salt the earth and press on into Zion Canyon in search of the survivors. The actions of these Legion proxies all but extinguishing the tribe of New Canaanites, adding to the growing list of tribes who faced annihilation from the Legion, either directly or indirectly.
I have bad news for your employers. New Canaan was destroyed, its citizens scattered. All because of the Whitelegs. And Caesar, of course. The Whitelegs want to join the Legion. Caesar's rite of passage is the destruction of the New Canaanites, almost assuredly because of me.
While the events of Fallout New Vegas are at this point still left ambiguous, and with any luck will continue to be left as such, it is worth noting the handful of tribes that interact with the Legion in one way or another following the various endgame slides. During the events of the main story, the Legion has a handful of proxies at work for them, other than the Whitelegs. One of these are the Great Khans, who, if left alone during the campaign, go on to fight for the Legion at the final battle of Hoover Dam. In the event of a Legion victory, they are forcibly assimilated into the Legion, marking the 88th tribe to join their ranks. Two other proxies are that of the Fiends of Outer Vegas and the Omertas of the Strip, both of which are utilized in Caesar's terror campaign prior to the final battle, but are ultimately wiped out in the event of a Legion victory. The Fiends' crippling addiction to chems rendering them worthless, and the Omertas likely being too shady and corrupt to be considered for assimilation. Caesar also seeks to utilize the skills and munitions of another of Vegas's famous tribes, the Boomers. Should they choose to fight for or against the Legion, they are left largely alone in the event that they manage to repair their bomber. However, it should be noted that if the bomber is never repaired and the Legion is victorious at the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, the Boomers are eventually overrun by Legion forces and ultimately assimilated, adding an 89th tribe to their ranks. In the event of a Legion victory, Caesar's forces move to occupy all settlements up to the Mojave outpost. In this expansion, they are certain to encounter the various smaller tribes of the Mojave. Through the end slides, we know for certain that they eradicate the Powder Gangers, opting not to assimilate them for unknown reasons. If I had to guess, likely due to their insubordinate and debaucherous behaviors, among other things. In this push, they will also encounter the long-lost brothers of the Khans from Vault 15. I'm speaking, of course, about the Jackals and Vipers. While not a part of the original V-15 crew, a tribe of raiders known as the Scorpions are also romping around these parts and will inevitably come into contact with the Legion as well. While no information is available as to how the Legion will handle their dealings with these various tribes, my guess is that they would all be eradicated. Assimilation, not even on the table. It's clear that Caesar seeks tribes that contain specific skills that would be beneficial to his ranks. Some notable ones including survival knowledge, medical knowledge, and combat prowess. These skills are not typically found amongst bands of raiders and scavengers. In addition, the smaller size of these tribes would indicate that assimilating them may be more hassle than what it's worth. And that brings us to the tribes of Zion Canyon. We know for sure that regardless of how hard they simp for Caesar, the Whitelegs are denied entry in the Legion due to their utter uselessness as anything other than a large band of raiders. But what are the Sorrows and Dead Horses? I believe both tribes have the potential for assimilation, but I think Caesar would be more interested in their total destruction. The Dead Horses would have made the perfect candidates for the Legion, but due to their link to Joshua Graham, Caesar would most certainly prefer they be completely destroyed, forever removing the memory and worship of the Burned Man from history. The Sorrows, on the other hand, have the highest likelihood for assimilation, in my opinion. Although pacifists in nature, we do see that they are capable of violence in Graham's ending of the story, becoming a solid warrior tribe in their own right. With their knowledge of tribal remedies and their advanced stealth and unarmed capabilities, the Sorrows look like the best candidates for a future career as legionaries. Unfortunately, I think they would also face total destruction at the hands of the Legion due to their connection to Joshua Graham and Daniel. Only time will tell. From a single tribe in a pocket of the Grand Canyon to the total domination of 4 southwestern US states, Caesar's Legion is unceasing, made stronger by each and every tribe that joins their ranks, bringing with them knowledge, experience, and ability. This has been the tribes of Caesar's Legion, 87 strong, with even more to come. Always true to Caesar. The NCR, Caesar's Legion. Two diametrically opposed governmental juggernauts inhabiting the western half of America. In the conflict we find ourselves during the events of Fallout New Vegas, the militaries of these mass monsters are engaged in a head-to-head deadlock over the Mojave Wasteland, refusing to budge an inch to the other, setting up the player character as a driving force that shifts the balance of power to whomever they deem worthy. The territories controlled by each faction in-game grant us insight into the modus operandi of their military, but in-game evidence to the operation of their civilian state remains largely ambiguous, more so for the Legion than the NCR. However, despite this shortcoming, we are able to garner just enough information from New Vegas, as well as earlier Fallout titles, to paint a picture of the civilian territories of these factions. The stage has been set. Dear viewers, welcome to the Wasteland. To truly understand civilian life in the NCR and Legion territories, a brief understanding of what the factions represent to the grand narrative of the game must first be established. Both factions are a rehashing of the past, old world ideals revived and brought into this new post-apocalyptic era, with the new California Republic being analogous to the pre-war government, a republic with all of its benefits and all of its flaws. Meanwhile, Caesar's Legion is a rehashing of the ancient Roman military annexation state, specific to the operations under Gaius Julius Caesar during his campaigns in Gaul, what is now modern-day France. A true totalitarian dictatorship, where all must render unto Caesar. Just like their pre-war counterparts, civilians in the NCR are typically citizens of the country, or soon-to-be citizens that live in annexed territories, such as Vegas. Meanwhile, the civilians that occupy Legion territories are not citizens at all, as the Legion government doesn't support it. Rather, they are subjects. The life of the individual is vastly different for each faction as well. The subjects in Legion-controlled territories are not enslaved, as the Legion only enslaves tribals, with few exceptions, and they enjoy predominantly peaceful existences, with abundant food, water, electricity, trade, and safety, with their only real worry being running afoul of the Legion. In the NCR, the life of a citizen is much as we would expect for those in pre-war America. With the boom of industry returning to California, most citizens in the NCR work a 9-to-5 job, have the freedom to start their own enterprises, and vote in their governing body. For the most part, NCR citizens enjoy a peaceful existence as well, with the only caveat to that being the NCR's ever-inflating currency, crushing taxes, and the ever-looming fear of conscription causing some of the citizens to seek brighter horizons. The inner workings of the economic system of these factions has always been a point of contention due to the format of their currencies and the heated debate around taxation. As previously stated, the NCR citizens face heavy taxation under the NCR government, causing a deep wealth divide between their upper and lower class, while the subjects of the Legion do not apparently face taxation whatsoever. In a conversation with Dale Barton, an independent trader from Arizona, we learn that it's more profitable for him to trade in Legion territories, as he's heavily taxed when trading with the NCR, not to mention the added cost of hiring security to protect him on the lawless NCR border. Dale Barton's account, while compelling, doesn't offer us much insight as to whether the subjects of the Legion territories pay taxes or not, due to this conversation being about the business of trade specifically, as well as his complaint levied against the NCR regarding the amount of taxation he faces when trading with them, implying the possibility that he has to pay taxes in Legion territory as well, albeit much less. Based on how the Romans handle taxation in their territories, it is my belief that subjects still have to pay taxes to the Legion in order to fund their campaigns. This money is then put in a treasury and used to refurbish and expand upon the infrastructure of towns, cities, roads, etc., and to pay the troops, who then buy food, water, and supplies, keeping the money in active circulation. Since the Legion is primarily a raiding force, they would be able to keep taxes low in their territories, as the majority of supplies would be requisitioned whilst on campaign. And since we almost always find legionaries carrying denarii, it's safe to assume that they get pay of some sort. This is nearly a mirror of how the NCR conducts their economics, with the necessity for higher tax rates coming from a myriad of factors, such as political corruption, greater demand for upkeep of a standing army, increase in maintenance cost of infrastructure, and replenishment of the treasury after Vegas bleeds them dry. While the NCR's fiat currency maintains its value in the core of its territory, its worth has over-halved on the frontier, sinking its value when converting to caps and crippling the NCR's purchasing power outside of its own territory. In contrast, the Legion adopted the ancient custom of self-backed currency, opting to generate coins out of precious metals. This type of currency was also in use by the NCR prior to the destruction of their gold reserves during the Brotherhood War. The inherent benefit of this type of currency is due to precious metals maintaining their value even in the event of the Legion collapsing, so long as human society still values gold and silver. And this is not the case with a fiat currency, such as that currently in use by the NCR, as fiat currency is backed only by a government's word. Once that government collapses, the value of the dollar ceases to exist. While the NCR dollar continues to lose its value on the frontier, the Legion currency remains stable, actively maintaining its full value inside and outside of its territory, ultimately resulting in the Legion having more buying power than the NCR in the Mojave and other non-Legion territories. The stability introduced into America with the formation of these factions has led to a new era of prosperity for both. While little is known about how prosperous cities in the East are, we know of at least a few that are doing well. From conversations with Raul, our old ghoul companion, we learned that Tucson was a thriving settlement before the time of Caesar, and it's speculated that the city prospered even more due to the Legion wiping out the raiders that had plagued the city. Furthermore, cities such as Phoenix and Flagstaff are confirmed to have long been under Legion control, with Flagstaff even acting as the Legion's capital. Based on the stability introduced into the region with the arrival of Caesar's Legion and the economics Caesar has established, we can assume that they are well on their way to being equally as prosperous to those in the West. And we know for certain that the West has benefited greatly. By the events of New Vegas, the NCR has re-entered the modern age with the re-implementation of industrial manufacturing for arms, armor, vehicles, tools, equipment, etc. They have also seen massive success with livestock and agriculture, leading to food markets being a common sight yet again. The citizens work jobs and are able to buy property, and nearly everything inside their core territory has been scavenged, leading to the picture of a clean, well put together, and prosperous community. With a confirmed population of over 700,000 by 2241 and an estimated population of over 1 million by the events of New Vegas, the NCR is considered to be the largest nation in the post-war United States and is often viewed as significantly larger than that of the territories of every other post-war faction, Legion included. Unfortunately, there isn't any evidence of Legion-controlled territories' total population to compare against. Entering into conjecture, it is my belief that Legion territory has an equal civilian population to that of the NCR, due to their empire spanning 4 states, all with several massive cities, as well as the Legion's reluctance to conscript their subjects, meaning they are safe from harm and allotted all resources they need to safely have families. And if they don't have more population as of yet, it's highly likely that they will in time. The NCR's total population is staggering, but it should be noted that they suffered heavily from years of infighting, a factor that is currently non-existent in Legion territory. The Brotherhood War killed thousands of NCR citizens, with the 3-decade-long expansion into the Mojave killing thousands upon thousands more. The only factor that I believe leads to the NCR having more population than the Legion is their age. The NCR has been around for 92 years, while the Legion was formed a mere 34 years ago. Obviously, with time comes greater possibility for numbers, but the sheer amount of people who survive to exist in Legion territories shouldn't be underestimated. Another point of contention when referencing the population of these lands is the Legion's treatment of tribals, being famous for eradicating many tribes outright, which would obviously decrease the area's population. And this is wholly accurate to some degree. While the Legion seeks to assimilate tribes, there have been several who have proved too debased to be assimilated. An example of this can be seen with the Fiends. Caesar uses their services in battle against the NCR, but should he win the final battle of Hoover Dam, he opts not to integrate them, and instead eradicates them due to their over-reliance on Kims. What's not often noted is that the modern NCR doesn't usually absorb tribes at all, often opting to eradicate them outright. In fact, this exact draconian method is what led the would-be President Kimball to massive popularity as a military general, and the citizens of the NCR definitely did not complain about the increase in security in their territory. It's widely known that the NCR experiences more safety hazards than a country of their size should. What's not commonly known, however, is that these security risks, such as the aforementioned tribes of raiders, occur largely on their border. the core NCR territories are safe from the majority of threats that do plague the wasteland, with a few exceptions being mafia rule over New Reno, various violent gangs in the bigger cities, and the odd band of highwaymen looking to make a quick buck off a passing Brahmin wrangler. Crime is handled by a judicial system much like it was in pre-war America, so any crimes such as theft, assault, or even murder are investigated by the police, an arrest is made, the criminal is tried, and when found guilty, imprisoned. In Legion territories, all criminal organizations and most individual criminals have been killed or driven off, with the majority of hostile wildlife completely eradicated. So safe in Legion territory that traders can often travel freely without guards, and when someone does step out of line, they are dealt with harshly and immediately, as Caesar does not allow for such delinquency. One interesting point I would like to open up a dialogue on are the religious beliefs of the civilians within these territories. We know Caesar's legion follows the cult of Mars, but it's unclear if this religion is even taught to those outside of the legion, let alone worshipped. I can't imagine it wouldn't at least be taught, as everyone who believes in Caesar's holy mission would make a valuable ally to his cause. But to put it bluntly, this is pure conjecture. As for the NCR, they don't have a state-run religion due to their principles of religious freedom, and we don't have any evidence of a specific religion practiced by the majority of citizens. But we are aware of a few religions practiced within their borders, including Dharma, the original religious beliefs of Shady Sands, Habology, likely Mormonism due to the NCR's proximity to New Canaan, and various cults worshipped by gangs like the Vipers. In the world of Fallout, we are presented with a myriad of factions, each showcasing their own system of governance to control their individual territories, from political ideology to economic process and industry. With the NCR and Caesar's Legion, we have two of the largest, most successful factions in the canon of the series, controlling a fourth of the entire landmass of the mainland United States, and clashing in the largest and deadliest conflict this country has seen in 2 centuries. Whomever the victor, it's undoubtable that the lands of each faction and the civilians contained within will be irrevocably changed forever.
Caesar sleeps, but doesn't awaken. I fear it is only a matter of days before death claims him.
In the Mojave Wasteland, many live and many die just as they had in the old world, but some deaths are not as cut and dry as we might think, resulting in ambiguity that quickly leads to disinformation. And no one's presumed state of life or death is more ambiguous than that of the Legion's founder, the mighty Caesar himself. Today, we will address the rumors and find out, once and for all, the true fate of Lord Caesar. The stage is set. Now, dear legionaries, welcome to the Wasteland. Founder of the Legion, Lord Caesar, formerly known as Edward Sallow, began life out west in the old NCR. He grew up as a follower of the apocalypse near the ruins of Los Angeles, now known as the Great Boneyard. Raised in this faction of scholars and humanitarians, he would receive an extensive education, specializing in anthropology and linguistics, a fitting background for the man whose destiny was yet to be realized. In the year 2246, Sallow, accompanied by a physician named Bill Calhoun, and likely more members whose names have been forgotten to history, would depart from the Boneyard and embark on an expedition to the Grand Canyon, the purpose of which was to make contact with, learn, and record the dialects of the canyon's tribes. The road was long, and the desert scorching, sandstorms biting at the skin of the explorers. Making a brief stop to relieve themselves from the stinging winds, the expedition would uncover a cache of books that survived the Great War, entombed, kept safe from the harshness of the elements. Among them lay 2 specific texts that caught the attention of young Sallow, texts that once digested would change the course of history forever. Before this point, the extent of Sallow's knowledge of Imperial Rome is relatively unknown. However, that knowledge was definitively bolstered after reading these 2 books. The first, known as the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, covered many facets of ancient and imperial Rome, from their founding and cultural development throughout the years to the establishment of their overall ideology, religion, politics, and even economy. The second text was written by the historical Caesar himself. The text, aptly named Commentarii de Bello Gallico, is a personal accounting of Caesar's conquering of local tribes during his invasion of Gaul. Salo would dig deep into this literature for several weeks, forming the seed that would eventually grow into his grand vision. Along the way, the party would meet with a Mormon missionary and tribal specialist by the name of Joshua Graham. Together with Graham, they would soon make contact with the first of the Grand Canyon tribes, the Blackfoot. Things were going well, more or less, but after a mistranslation in conversation, the party's relationship with the Blackfoot tribe would quickly sour, leading the tribe to capture the party and attempt to hold them for ransom. Taking notice of the Blackfoot's precarious position with their neighbors, notably the 7 other tribes they were actively at war with, Salo realized that if the group didn't act, they would soon be eliminated with the rest of the tribe. Against the objections of Calhoun, Salo would strike a deal with the Blackfoot. He would train them in the art of war in exchange for the group's freedom. The tribe would accept, and during the conquering of these 7 opposing tribes, would recognize Salo as their war chief. It was in this act that Edward Salo would cease to exist, and Lord Caesar, founder of the mighty Legion, was born. 35 years have passed since these events, and in that time, Caesar's expansion has not ceased, having conquered and assimilated 87 tribes into his legion, and forging an empire that spans across 4 U.S. states. While no doubt impressive, all things must come to an end. And for Lord Caesar, it appears his time at the head of the Legion is up. Lately, Caesar has been secluding himself to his tent, complaining of headaches. When the Centurion Silus was awaiting orders for a time-critical mission, it took Caesar 3 days before he could issue the order to dispatch them, forcing Silus and his men to operate on old intel, which resulted in the loss of the entire Centuria after an NCR ambush. To add to this, Caesar's left leg has been dragging, his face sunken in, sickly, and he stopped speaking mid-conversation, only to continue minutes later as if nothing happened. It's clear that whatever the condition he's facing is, it's severe, and it's affecting his ability to lead. With a decent knowledge of medicine, we can deduce that Caesar is suffering from a brain lesion, a condition that will prove to be fatal if not operated on quickly. This is where his dilemma lies. It's a common misconception that if the Courier does not assist Caesar in removing his tumor, that Caesar will undoubtedly fall into a coma and pass away from his illness prior to the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Upon notifying Caesar of his condition, it's revealed that Caesar already knew that it was a brain lesion, with the context of his conversation with the Courier revealing that Caesar had simply been testing them. He knew he needed a physician, and he wanted to see whether the Courier could be the one to fill this role and perform the surgery, or if he could only rely on them to fetch the tools to do so. Should the Courier not prove worthy, Caesar would need to find someone else, and quickly. In this event, it's most likely that Caesar would turn his attention to the local chapter of the Followers of the Apocalypse. Having been one himself, he is personally aware of their medical prowess, and would seek to capture a doctor to fulfill this role. This isn't unreasonable to assume either, as we can see Caesar offer to purchase Arcade Gannon from the Courier, should the option arise, showing firsthand his willingness to accept the help from a fellow follower of the Apocalypse. During this conversation, it's also revealed that Caesar is aware of the location of an abandoned vault that could potentially house a diagnostic scanning module for his Mark III autodoc that, if equipped, would render his need for a personal physician moot. With all the knowledge before him prior to falling into a comatose state, Caesar dispatches the Courier to gather these components needed to save his life. Through the eyes of the Courier, we can see firsthand how each of these paths would play out, with the latter option proving to be the most difficult of these tasks. In the ruins of Vault 34, amongst the horde of feral ghouls and radiation, lies an old Mark III autodoc, containing within it a functioning diagnostic scanning module. In order to retrieve it, one must ascend several floors, clearing the infestation along the way. A feat that would be easily accomplished by battle-tested hardened legionaries, as the feral ghouls wouldn't provide much of a challenge to these seasoned warriors, and the level of radiation emanating throughout the vault isn't quite high enough to kill them. Not before they could retrieve the module and escape, that is. The chance of success is even higher for Frumentarii, who would be more likely to have been sent out on a mission of this magnitude, and would also have permission to use radiation chems to increase their chances of survival. In the unlikely event that the Legion fails to get their hands on a functioning diagnostic scanning module from Vault 34, they would certainly succeed in finding and capturing a physician. Throughout the Mojave Wasteland, the followers of the Apocalypse can be found servicing the members of the community in several locations, from their headquarters at the Old Mormon Fort in Freeside to their outpost just south of the Grub and Gulp rest stop. In all of these locations, several doctors can be found and kept safe by a handful of guards. In one location specifically, not only can a doctor be found, but so too can the tools needed to perform Caesar's life-saving surgery. This, accompanied with their isolated location, makes the New Vegas Medical Clinic a prime target. There's also the possibility that the Legion doesn't need to seek external help in this matter, and is able to pull a physician from their own ranks. At the fort lives a slave named Siri, who was training to become a medical doctor in a small settlement in New Mexico before it was overran during a Legion raid. While her training is incomplete, her knowledge of first aid and tribal remedies proves useful to the Legion, who, as a whole, is largely ignorant of medical science. While Siri is likely not medically adept enough to successfully perform the surgery herself, her presence implies that there could be more amongst the Legion who have a background in medicine. And perhaps amongst the slaves exists a doctor that could cure Caesar of his ailment, circumventing the need to capture a doctor from the surrounding wasteland. Should the Courier have died in that shallow grave outside of Goodsprings, it's certain that events would have transpired in much the same way, and once his symptoms became severe enough, Caesar would have dispatched his legionaries, most likely his famed and efficient Frumentarii, to collect the resources needed for this surgery. Through the speed and resourcefulness of his greatest men, Caesar would ultimately survive his ordeal, one way or another, be it from the autodoc performing the surgery and saving his life, or from a doctor captured by the Legion and forced to operate on him. In any event, Caesar lives, and goes on to challenge the NCR over the fate of New Vegas for a second time. Thank you so much for watching. I see a lot of comments on these videos talking about how Caesar dies in every ending unless you save his life, and I always wondered where people get this notion. Caesar is nothing if not resourceful, and all the information provided to us shows that he has the knowledge, means, and motive to cure his condition. Whether it's due to cut content, or the writer's inability to finish fleshing out the faction, the fate of Caesar is never mentioned in-game for other playthroughs. It's not even alluded to. To add to this, there aren't any developer statements that allude to him for sure dying from this condition either. Looking at the in-game evidence, it's just not reasonable to assume that he would literally lay down and die without having some sort of contingency in place. For gameplay reasons, the player is that contingency, which makes for a great quest, but lore-wise, should the Courier not help, should the Courier have died, Caesar would just have someone else do it, and the events would proceed normally. Now, don't even get me started on the whole "the Legion dies with Caesar" misconception. That's going to have to be a whole video in of itself. As the Courier begins their journey across the hot sands of the Mojave, whispers emerge of an immense military force, a society of tribal slavers rivaling the size of the new California Republic. Stories fashioning fearless warriors thriving in the wilds of the wasteland, brutal and merciless in their approach. They marched through the biting winds of the desert with a singular goal in mind: conquest. As the Courier continues east, they get their first glimpse of Caesar's legion and the brutality of their justice. On this long stretch of road carrying the east, the acts of the legion become increasingly frequent. Patrols, outposts, caravans, completely annihilated, with towns such as Searchlight now tombs for NCR garrisons. To the north, Camp Forlorn Hope and the town of Novak are paralyzed with fear over these recent assaults, a fear exacerbated by the recent establishment of a forward operating base at Nelson. From this new outpost and many others dotted along the southern border of Nevada, Legion forces successfully harass NCR supply lines, setting traps, conducting ambushes, and dealing crippling blows to the Republic's occupation in the region. In command of this relentless campaign of terror sits one man, Aurelius of Phoenix. The ironclad Centurion is a formidable figure, standing tall as 6 feet 5 inches, and was handpicked by Caesar to spearhead the establishment of a bridgehead across the west bank of the Colorado River. Aurelius chose Cottonwood Cove as his new base of operations, forging the settlement of a new Legion stronghold strategically positioned in the narrows of the Colorado. This location was perfect for raising a sizable staging area, where troops are ferried to and from the fort with relative ease. Following the aforementioned destruction of Camp Searchlight, which effectively eradicated the NCR's military presence in southern Nevada, there was little standing in the way of a full Legion occupation. It is unknown what great victories Aurelius had achieved out east, but to be the single Centurion tasked with spearheading an operation of this scale, Caesar's trust in his abilities would have been immense, a shining testament to his skill amongst others of his rank. Every Centurion is an elite and experienced officer within the Legion. To reach this coveted rank, one must have conquered enough to prove their abilities not only in battle, but in leadership as well. Centurions lead a Centuria, a Roman military unit roughly equivalent to a company, equating 100 or more troops alongside their support personnel. They command these legionaries from camps, compounds, as well as in battle, being held wholly responsible for implementing Caesar's orders to the letter. They are tasked with maintaining strict discipline within the Legion, often utilizing harsh methods, including threats of crucifixion, to instill fear and control over the legionaries under their command. Should the need arise, they may even act as executioners, carrying out punishments for those who defy Caesar's will or violate Legion laws. Achieving the rank of Centurion is considered a prestigious honor within the Legion. It reflects a legionary's skill, dedication, and loyalty to the cause. The armor of a Centurion, which distinguishes them amongst their brothers, is earned through years of service and typically denoted in patchwork construction, showcasing the many trophies the legionary has collected from their fallen foes. This armor is also adorned with the crimson plume, allowing their troops to easily identify and rally to them in the heat of battle. In addition to battlefield leadership, Centurions are also involved in strategic planning and decision-making, playing a significant role in implementing Caesar's broader vision for the expansion and dominance over the ruins of the American Southwest. While operating with only 2 contubernia, squads consisting of 8 men each, Aurelius achieved great success in his occupation of southern Nevada, defying the odds through his merciless tactics and aggressive assaults on NCR Army patrols. Despite being outnumbered, he managed to inflict casualties on the NCR forces that were 4 times the size of his own Legion contingent, turning Cottonwood Cove, an otherwise abandoned pre-war location, into a single finger of the Legion stretching across the River Narrows. The mighty Aurelius takes immense pride in his rank, earned through his many years of conquest and unwavering devotion to Caesar. He is known for his intolerance towards those he deems unworthy. His aggressive demeanor and abhorrence for NCR profligates fuels his ruthless pursuit of them. Viewing them as cowards, Aurelius revels in the thought of destroying the NCR, going as far to incentivize others to carry out his will by offering bounties for their dog tags, a grim testament to his disdain for the enemy. Despite his ruthless exterior, glimpses to a softer side of Aurelius emerge upon closer inspection. Among the trophies of war that litter the many Legion camps such as this, there lay some items that would shed some light into a more nuanced facet of his personality. A teddy bear in his locker, a toy car on his desk, a Grognak the Barbarian comic at his bedside alongside beer and cigarettes, forbidden contraband to a legionary. While it's entirely possible that these items were here upon occupation, the context to which they are discovered lends credence to the idea that these are Aurelius's personal belongings, adding an intriguing layer to this ruthless character. In the harsh and unforgiving world of the Mojave Wasteland, Aurelius the Phoenix stands as a complex and formidable figure, embodying both the brutal strength of the Legion and the subtle nuances of humanity in the face of conflict. His success on the battlefield and the ironclad discipline of his men are a testament to his abilities as a leader and his spirit as a warrior. Always true to Caesar.
The news. Butcher. Monster.
When he arrives,
He could smell
your
weakness.
doom arrives with him.
There is no escaping. He killed one of my pack Brahmins simply because it was in his way.
Aurelius.
In battle, he seizes the enemy in his jaws and will not let go.
The news is
To call Linnaeus ferocious would be an understatement.
He's the best the Legion has to
I don't
offer.
even know if it's the same man.
all he cares about is destroying the
He's never
enemy.
been defeated in battle.
It was thanks to Aurelius.
He carries all the terrors of the
The
East.
goddess Linnaeus, monster of the
Call him
East.
the monster of the terror.
Of the East.
Monster of the East.
Monster.
And there's nothing more to be done. The Mojave awaits.
The monster, terror of the East. Legatus Linnaeus is the commander of Caesar's legions during the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. He's an imposing figure, standing at 7 feet tall, wielding a blade larger than the height of his enemies, and dons a unique armor, sculpted to the image of Mars, the Legion's god of war. It's clear he's a force to be reckoned with, but is he truly the legend we all know him as? Or is there more to the man than there is to the myth? The legend of Linnaeus, as told to us by Caesar, goes as follows. In his youth, the warrior that was not yet Linnaeus belonged to a tribe of the Arizona, known formally as the Hydebarks, to which he was their greatest warrior. He was so good, in fact, he often wiped out Legion patrols by himself. The Hydebarks had been in active conflict with the Legion and held out for many months against them. Eventually, the Legion had surrounded the tribe, forcing their hand. The tribe, realizing their defeat, surrendered and bent their knee to Caesar in order to avoid total extermination. Only the warrior who would become Linnaeus disagreed with this act of cowardice. Seething with rage, he went insane and began attacking members of his own tribe. Eventually, he was subdued, but not before 15 of his fellow warriors had fallen to his hand. Caesar was impressed by him, no doubt before these events due to his capabilities against Legion patrols, but most certainly after this show of violence against the Hydebarks. Caesar had him rescued and tended to. The warrior was maimed from the battle, his face nearly torn off. Caesar presented him with a gift and an ultimatum.
It was days before he regained consciousness. When he did, I went to his bedside and showed him the helmet I'd had forged to cover his face. I said he could have it if he'd fight for me. He accepted, on condition that he be allowed to kill the surviving males of his tribe. I said, make it the adult males, and you have a deal.
And with that, the former Hydebark dies, and the monster of the East is born. But how does the Legion really benefit from this legend? To understand this, we must examine the Legion's culture a bit closer. The Legion believed that the Great War was brought about by Mars, the god of war, who wished to wipe the slate clean so that the Legion could bring civilization back to the world under the rule of his son, Caesar. This religious belief helps to discipline legionaries and forces them to dedicate themselves to Caesar and his wishes, as his wishes are the wishes of Mars himself. Caesar weaponizes this belief with Linnaeus. The legionaries that serve under him have a constant reminder of their holy mission, as the eyes of Mars are literally upon them. The effectiveness of this propaganda is plain and evident in the Mojave, and is even embodied in the Divide, where former legionary marked men craft masks, armor, and weapons in his likeness, even going as far as to name their bumper swords Blade of the West, in direct reference to Linnaeus's Blade of the East. These symbols help to keep these former legionaries anchored in their chaotic surroundings, whether they bear them with malice or admiration. The monster of the East is sewn into every fabric of the Legate's myth. The name Linnaeus means butcher, sending a clear message to friend and foe alike. He wears armor to give him the appearance of Mars himself on the battlefield. He has his slaves struck blind so that they may never view his true face. He never fights a losing battle, adding to the ideation that he and the forces he leads are invincible. He enacts fear tactics on his own troops, such as the decimation, an ancient Roman punishment for cowardice, where a tenth of a legion would be beaten to death by the other 9/10. He ensures that his troops are more afraid of the commander behind them than they are the enemy before them. This propaganda proves extremely effective throughout the events of New Vegas. His presence bolsters the morale of the Legion while simultaneously decreasing the morale of its enemies. The monster of the East proves a valuable weapon in Caesar's arsenal. But what of the man? Who is Linnaeus really? Nearly everything we know of Linnaeus is conjecture, derived from the many stories told to us from the various sources throughout the Mojave, and even members within the Legion itself provide contradictory accounts. We do have a few facts about him that we can cement. He is a 7-foot-tall monster of a man. His slaves are in fact blinded. His face is indeed scarred as in his legend, but there isn't much else we can determine without deciphering the accounts of his backstory. We hear from head Praetorian Lucius that Linnaeus was in fact born into the Legion, and that his natural abilities allowed him to become a full legionary by the age of 12. We also hear from Antony that it took years to conquer Linnaeus's tribe, the Hydebarks, and that after their surrender, the warriors were granted clemency and allowed into the ranks of the Legion rather than a gruesome death at the hands of Linnaeus. Another of these accounts comes from Caesar's former right-hand man, Joshua Graham. He states that he does not know Linnaeus and believes that he has no interest in leading anyone unless it's in battle. From these accounts, we can formulate an alternate backstory for Linnaeus, one not born from legend, but through the crucible that is Caesar's Legion, became one. First, we must navigate the details of these accounts for their potential truths. To begin, let's take a look at Lucius. Lucius is one of the oldest members in the Legion. He has been in the Praetorian Guard for 13 years. From what we know of the ranking system, he would have to have been equal in skill and experience to that of a Centurion before having been extended an invite to join the Praetorian Guard. It's likely that it would take no less than 10 years to reach the rank of Centurion from that of recruit. We speculate this as Chief Hanlon explains that Caesar's veterans have all been serving for roughly a decade, and we know that it's from this pool that Centurions are chosen. This means that he has been in the Legion for at least 23 years, which is enough time to have seen Linnaeus either as a baby or as a child. And since the Legion was much smaller at that time, it's likely that Lucius would have known him personally and could personally attest to his natural abilities, especially if they were of the same rank or in a close hierarchy such as Decanus and his contubernia. It's highly likely that Lucius had personally seen Linnaeus in battle, That is to say, if we believe his account to be factual. The second account from Antony is more problematic. In Antony's account, he states that it took years to conquer Linnaeus' tribe, and that all the warriors were allowed to join the Legion after the tribe had been conquered. He makes no mention of Linnaeus killing anyone from that tribe like the legend states. Furthermore, we know that the Hydebarks were the 67th tribe conquered, and were conquered between the First and Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Julius Caesar would often exaggerate how little time it took him to conquer tribes, how little forces he lost, and how great the losses were for his enemies. All of this was propaganda to show how effective and powerful he was as a leader, and how his legions were invincible. It's likely that our Caesar does the same thing. Where he states it took months to surround the Hydebarks, it's not a stretch to believe it took actual years. I believe the Legion had been trying to conquer the Hydebarks since before the First Battle of Hoover Dam, if this were the case, and only managed to conquer them as the events of the First Battle of Hoover Dam came to a close. During the 4 years between the battles of the dam, Linnaeus was on campaign in the east, conquering tribes and absorbing them into the Legion. So if he came from the Hydebarks, it would have had to have been directly following the First Battle of Hoover Dam, and not much longer after this. This is to say that if Antony saw the conquering of the Hydebarks, there's no realistic way that Linnaeus could have come from their tribe, since Linnaeus is the legate who conquered Antony's tribe in the 4 years between the two battles of Hoover Dam. But if Antony didn't see the Hydebarks conquered, then perhaps he was informed of their true initiation into the Legion by a legionary who saw it with their own eyes, or maybe one from the tribe, revealing a potential nugget of truth into the origin of Linnaeus. In the Divide, we meet Ulysses, a former frumentari of Caesar's Legion and the main antagonist of the DLC. Ulysses is a man obsessed with symbolism, and he reveals to us many details of the Legion, from its history to its customs and ideations. We can even learn a great deal about Linnaeus and his battle tactics from Ulysses. However, the only notable bit of information we get from him in regards to Linnaeus' backstory is that Ulysses isn't sure if he is even the same man under the mask. This could mean many things, but in the context to which it's said, it's likely that this statement isn't meant in the literal sense of Linnaeus being a different person each time, but rather it's allegorical, a testament to the lengths Linnaeus will go to obscure his identity to friend and foe alike. Lastly, we have Graham. He states,
I don't know Linnaeus, but from what I've heard, he has no interest in leading anyone, unless it's in battle.
Many in the Fallout community find it questionable if Linnaeus was in the Legion that Graham wouldn't have known of him, since his skills were so remarkable, and he would have stood out amongst the legionaries. However, in the context to which he makes this statement, he's saying that he doesn't know him personally, but he certainly knows of him. Knows his tactics, his brutality, his distaste for statesmanship. All indicators that he likely heard of him through the grapevine while still in the Legion. And harkening back to the account of Lucius, Graham was a legate from the minute the Legion was birthed into the wasteland. He very likely didn't concern himself with his inferiors, and only commanded them as whole units in battle. This could explain why he never truly knew Linnaeus. However, it's equally as likely he hadn't heard of Linnaeus until after the events of the First Battle of Hoover Dam, since the legionary who would be Linnaeus might not have been made into the legend yet. Each of these accounts provides pieces of this puzzle, enough to begin formulating a thesis. This is what I believe to be the true origin of Legatus Linnaeus, using the in-game evidence, character statements, and conjecture based on Legion's lore, function, and ranking to determine a proper timeline of events. In the early days of Caesar's Legion, they began to expand throughout Arizona, absorbing tribe after tribe along the way. A man from one of these tribes would be born into the Legion and raised as a warrior. This man, whose physical height and strength allowed him to stand out, would begin excelling in training and eventually battle. He would become a fully fledged legionary by the age of 12, where he would continue to serve and climb the ranks. Perhaps in one of his battles, his face was mauled, leaving it heavily scarred, or perhaps he accumulated the scars over the course of his career. Either way, he eventually would gain recognition for his leadership and strategies, having never once lost a battle. After years of service, he would be promoted to Centurion, where he would begin to lead larger battles with more troops, all for the glory of Mars. This would continue until one day, tragedy struck. The Legion lost the battle for Hoover Dam. Demoralized and lost without the Malpais legate, the Legion would enter into a state of unrest. It was in this moment Caesar realized he would lose more than just the battle for the dam if he allowed his Legion to continue down this path. He began formulating a myth, the Monster of the East, to act as a rallying point for the Legion, and it just so happened that he had the perfect legionary for the job. He sent for one of his Centurions, a man of great strength, intellect, and strategy. He presented him with his new armor and helm, and dictated to him his new role. It was in this moment that Linnaeus, as we know him, was born. Caesar proclaimed him legatus and spread the legend of him as the greatest warrior of a tribe recently conquered, the Hydebarks. He then sent Linnaeus east to conquer tribals in order to swell the Legion's numbers for the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. These orders had a double purpose. If the legate was to defeat the NCR, he needed experience as a general leading entire armies. This allowed Caesar to assess the skill of his new commander, to see if Linnaeus truly was the monster Caesar made him out to be. The Eastern campaigns really tested Linnaeus. He states in dialogue that the Eastern campaign was hard fought and took many years. Lack of tribals for reconditioning made bolstering the Legion's ranks difficult. Stretching their supply lines so thin hindered the Legion even further. Many casualties came about from the fighting with the Hangdog tribe, and against the hordes of wild mongrels in Denver. However, Linnaeus is no fool, and often adapts his strategies to counter his foe at every turn. After many battles against the Hangdogs, Linnaeus devised a strategy to break them. He exploited their religious beliefs and began throwing their dogs onto fires so that the tribals would believe their spirit animals would burn forever in the afterlife. Distraught by this, the Hangdogs surrendered, and Linnaeus marched on victorious. The Legion's morale has never been better, his troops stronger than ever, as the Eastern campaigns created many veterans. Impressed with his new general, Caesar called him west. Now, Linnaeus faces his toughest opponent yet, and his enemies face a monster, the terror of the East.
As an army grows, the need for a system of organization and structure exponentially increases. Establishing a good structure allows for the army to properly allocate resources, duties, and responsibilities amongst its troops. This is no different for Caesar's Legion, our favorite band of Roman LARPing slavers. Members of the Legion fulfill a large variety of roles, from direct combat to leadership to diplomacy and even record-keeping. Within these roles exists a clear and precise chain of command, based off a merit system. The more a legionary accomplishes, the better rank they will have. This is an oversimplification, of course, as outliers exist. However, more will be covered as we get deeper into the video. We'll be starting off with the lowest members of their primary military ranks, the recruit. Recruits are the backbone of the Legion, and the majority of their military force. Recruits are recent initiates from conquered lands and tribes that have completed recruit training and are either untested or lightly tested in battle. Due to being the lowest rank in the Legion, they are the most expendable of troops. That said, this does not mean they are weak. They must first survive Legion training after all. While not much is known about Legion training, a sheer beating and interrogation is referenced as child's play in comparison to Legion training by Silus, a captured Legion commander. This leads us to believe that Legion training is very arduous, and it's certain that only the tough will survive it. We can see this in-game, as recruit legionaries will have higher health and speed compared to the average NCR trooper. However, they will have lower health due to wearing inferior armor, being that of repurposed football gear. Legion recruits are often equipped with machetes and spears, as they must prove themselves with these rudimentary weapons before they can earn the right to use better force multipliers. That said, some recruits can be seen using basic firearms such as varmint rifles and various models of handguns. Once a recruit has proven themselves, they may be awarded the rank of Prime. Prime legionaries are warriors who have proven themselves in more than a few battles. The rank of Prime is directly above that of Recruit and is made up of recruits who have been promoted through merit or kids who were raised in the Legion and have proven themselves worthy of the rank. Prime legionaries have better armor and equipment and are fierce warriors, having given fully into Caesar's dogma. The armor they wear has a few upgrades to the recruit armor, but is mostly characterized through their crimson face coverings, as well as the crimson balteus around their waist. They carry better weapons than that of recruits, such as rifles and carbines, and are typically stationed in larger legion settlements, as opposed to the smaller raiding camps. When a Prime Legionary has survived countless battles and shown they are a force to be reckoned with, they may be promoted to Veteran. Veteran Legionaries are battle-tested, ruthless warriors, having survived longer than most of their contemporaries. Not an easy feat for a Legionary. Veterans are equipped with better armor than that of Primes and can be discerned via the nails protruding from their shoulder pads, as well as the red stripe bisecting their helmets. They also use far superior weapons compared to that of the Prime Legionaries, often being seen using riot shotguns and assault carbines. When a legionary shows great promise amongst their rank, they may be promoted to the rank of Decanus. The Decani are low-level officers in the Legion and can be found in the Recruit, Prime, and Veteran ranks. A Decani is first and foremost a squad leader, and is likely chosen from the ranks when a superior officer notices inherent leadership qualities within them. A Decanus will always wear the armor of their current rank and will also wear a feathered helmet, or in the case of my mods, a red vertical plume. The feathers can be seen representing his rank as well, with black and red representing the recruit, black with white tips representing a prime, and black, red, and white representing a veteran. The weapons of the Decani will also vary depending on the level, with recruits often using blades or handguns, while the veterans can be seen using sniper rifles and marksmanship carbines. When not commanding a contubernia, a Decanus is usually stationed with the Centurion and acts as his assistant and second in command. When a veteran Decanus has earned the right, he may be promoted to that of a Centurion. The Centurion is the most elite of the Legion's military forces, the best of the best, a thoroughly battle-tested and hardened soldier who has killed hundreds and enslaved hundreds more in Caesar's name. They are battlefield commanders and typically oversee several centuria, being made up of several contubernia. While they are frontline officers, most are kept away from conflict due to being a vital strategic resource for the Legion, and much too important to risk losing over small skirmishes. However, this is not always the case, as the Centurion Silus actively led raiding parties against the NCR alongside his troops, and numerous Centurions can be seen leading fire teams in the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Centurions have by far the best weapons and equipment and are easily distinguished by their unique armor, having been pieced together from the various armors of their fallen foes. They carry the most advanced weapons available as well, such as anti-material rifles and marksmanship carbines. Centurions are by far the oldest and deadliest warriors in the entirety of the Legion. Once a Centurion has proven himself, and assuming a position is open, he may be promoted to that of Legate. A Legate is a general of the Legion. They are primarily responsible for leading large assaults on targets, devising and implementing strategies to defeat enemies, and conquering territories to further the Legion's goals and resources. Legates sit at the top of the military ranks and answer only to Caesar himself. It is unknown how many legates exist in the Legion, however we only get to see one active legate during the events of New Vegas. It is likely there are more, however, as a percentage of Caesar's army would be needed to keep the peace in the eastern lands while the bulk of the Legion's forces are campaigning in the west. During the events of New Vegas, we get to see Legatus Linnaeus, Caesar's second-in-command, who is the toughest, meanest, most ruthless member of the entire Legion. He wears a custom suit of armor, fashioned in the likeness of Mars, the Roman god of war, and he carries a massive blade that can knock grown men and women off their feet and several yards away. It's likely that other legates would not be nearly as tough and durable as Linnaeus though, as he is more of a symbol of the Legion's strength due to his trait of being an unrealistic man. This can be seen in the example of Joshua Graham, the last legate who led the first battle of Hoover Dam. He was, for all intents and purposes, a normal guy, albeit tough as nails. It's likely that other legates would be akin to Centurions, perhaps still donning their patchwork armor, or perhaps they have custom armor, such as the likes of Gaius Magnus, the head Centurion of Drywells. Legates would likely have the best weapons available at their disposal as well, possibly even energy weapons, although would probably never get to use them due to not finding themselves in an active war zone. Now on to the support ranks. This category exists in a type of gray area, as some of these legionaries perform combat roles, but it's unclear where they exist in the chain of command, such as the Vexillarius. A Legion Vexillarius is the standard bearer for the Legion, and acts as a morale booster for other battlefield troops. A standard is a war flag used by military forces when on land, and was used by militaries for generations, notably the Romans. They are seen in-game to have unique armor that sets them out from the other ranks. This armor appears to be that of Legion Prime armor, with the additions of plates on the chest, a wolf covering for their helmet, and the Legion banner atop their shoulders. This could possibly speak to their skill level, as well as time spent in the Legion. The weapons they carry are generally mid-tier firearms, such as hunting rifles, and they can occasionally be seen wielding machetes. The Vexillarius, who carry the bull into battle, are seen as a symbol of the Legion's strength to legionaries and their enemies alike. Because of this, the Vexillarius must be tougher and more proficient than their contemporaries so as not to tank the morale of the Legion by dying on the battlefield. Another example of a gray area in rank is that of an explorer. The Legion Explorer is an advanced scout whose primary responsibilities include but are not limited to land surveillance, notation of strategic centers, documentation of potential resources, and relaying of communications between the many Legion outposts. It's possible this rank is related to the Speculatores, but since in-game evidence implies that the Speculatores are made up by a Frumentari to manipulate the Great Khan leadership, I don't want to cover them individually. Rather, I will be lumping them into the Explorer role since they would serve a near-identical function. The Explorers wear Legion recruit armor with a few modifications, such as an extra duty belt and cloth headgear. Although the armor they wear appears to be more for the purposes of functionality and doesn't appear to be indicative of their skill or time within the Legion itself. The lighter armor is advantageous when moving quickly and quietly from location to location and would be of utmost importance to a scout. They are generally armed with spears and machetes, likely so that they can stay quiet while on their missions, but they are also seen carrying hunting rifles or repeaters, allowing them to dispatch threats from longer distances should the need arise. Moving on to a more mundane role, we have that of the guards. Guards appear to be chosen amongst any of the ranks and don't do much other than prevent people from carrying banned items into Legion-occupied areas, and returning said banned items should they leave those areas or should Caesar deem it necessary. Other than this, they are first to fight should an enemy infiltrate one of the gates. They are equipped with the appropriate armor and weapons of their earned rank and will be very upset if you refuse to give them your banned items, so don't choose holdout, okay? Within the forts these guards watch over, one can find Houndmasters. Houndmasters are the Legion's premier dog trainers, most hailing from the remnants of the Hand Dog tribe of Colorado. These former tribals viewed dogs as their spirit animals and spent their whole life around them. This led them to a natural advantage when training dogs for the Legion. It's not known if every Houndmaster was a former Hand Dog, but it's likely that there would be some non-Hand Dog members who picked up the craft in the time leading to the events of New Vegas. In game, we only get to meet a single Houndmaster. This legionary is known as Antony. His armor is that of a veteran legionary, however, it is not known if he is awarded this armor due to his role as a Houndmaster, or if he achieved it through battle. It's likely he fought on the front lines with his hounds, and that is how he earned veteran status. Antony is not seen wielding a weapon when we encounter him at the fort, but it's likely he would not find the need to carry weapons as he is surrounded by Legion mongrels who are eager to rip anyone who threatens him to shreds. Speaking of mongrels, the mongrels of the Legion are an unidentified breed of post-war dog. Bred for battle by Legion Houndmasters, these dogs are seen accompanying legionaries in scouting parties and guarding key fortifications, such as Nelson and the fort. Legion mongrels are tougher than the average wasteland dog and more vicious in combat. They do not wear any armor and are not seen carrying any weapons, except the obvious teeth and claws. But that's okay, as they are deadly enough and efficient with these weapons. And while they work for what is largely considered an evil faction, they're all still good boys. A faction like the Legion wouldn't be complete without people to make their weapons. Introducing the Blacksmith. Blacksmiths are veteran legionaries that are primarily responsible for the creation, maintenance, and optimization of the Legion's armory. The blacksmiths are found in heavily fortified war camps behind the front lines and not in other areas. They all appear in veteran Legion armor and typically brandish a machete or chainsaw should the need arise for them to cut someone down to size. Now let's not forget, a team is only as strong as its weakest link. This is why the Legion deploys instructors. Legion instructors are veteran legionaries in charge of preparing kids and captures to join the ranks of the Legion Military. This helps to ensure that every individual who earns the title of recruit is strong enough to fight under the banner of the Bull. It's advantageous to have veterans assigned to this task, as they would be acutely aware of the physical, mental, and spiritual toughness an individual must have to survive life in the Legion. They use common motivation techniques such as comparing a recruit's performance to that of someone subpar, such as a slave, and threatening violence should the recruit not meet the demands of training. The instructors are equipped in veteran armor and brandish a whip on their belt, certainly for motivational reasons. One can be seen training future legionaries at the fort before the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, where he expresses his harshness on them, but also expresses that he is quite proud of their progress. But how do Legion forces get across the Colorado if the only bridge for miles is occupied by enemy forces? They use cursors. Cursors are ferrymen for the Legion forces along the Colorado River. It is unknown if this is common practice fulfilled by whoever is available, or if it's a designated role within the Legion's logistics. In-game, we only encounter a single cursor by the name of Lucullus. If he dies, then he is not replaced, which suggests that it is a specific role that is not easily filled. However, I would take this with a grain of salt, as it's likely just a gameplay mechanic and not sweet, succulent, juicy lore. Lucullus is seen in-game wearing Legion Explorer armor, which may indicate that the cursor position is usually filled by explorers. This would make sense, as they are accustomed to longer journeys and likely would be able to move through enemy-occupied territory with relative ease, and without alerting them, which is important. He is seen using a hunting rifle, likely to allow him to engage enemies on the cliffs as he is ferrying legionaries to and from the fort. One of the jobs of a cursor is to ferry captures from Cottonwood Cove to the fort to undergo their new lives as slaves. But who is in charge of these captures prior to that? The Legion Slave Master. A Slave Master is a role in the Legion dealing primarily with the assessment and dispersal of slaves. It's possible that there is an entire Slaver Guild support branch that deals with acquisition, although the only mention of something along these lines is in a single bill of sale we find in Novak, referencing the Offices of Slavery. The only slave master we meet is a legionnaire by the name of Canyon Runner. Canyon Runner is equipped with Legion Explorer armor and carries a machete gladius. He is not usually seen using firearms, but may pick one up if he finds himself in need of a greater force multiplier. It's likely that Legion slave masters rarely see battle due to their position being largely administrative, and as such do not require heavier armors and weapons, such as that of the veterans. On the contrary, they may be primarily tasked with trapping and escorting slaves to a fortified area. The in-game evidence doesn't make it clear, unfortunately. However, I do believe this is to be the case. This is supported by the existence of the consul rank. Not much is known of the consul rank, except that they are a position within the aforementioned Offices of Slavery. The only example of one we see in-game isn't even a character, rather the signature of an M. Licinius Crassus on a bill of sale. It appears that this position only deals with paperwork in regards to buying and selling slaves, and not actual acquisition itself. This leads me to believe that the consul is above the slave master in the chain of command, and as such would be an isolated administration position, implying that the slave masters do more than just buy, sell, and assess slaves. They probably go out and capture them as well. This would explain why we find Canyon Runner donning Legion Explorer armor. As for the consul, we cannot discern the experience level of this legionary due to the lack of in-game evidence, nor the kit they battle with, although it can be assumed that they are superb warriors, as the pen is mightier than the sword. I would like to bring up a new rank for consideration. This rank is never officially stated to be amongst the support roles within the Legion, however there is a clear example of this role in action. At the Legion safe house, there is a legionary who stops by every few days known as Atticus. Atticus is a veteran legionary who primarily maintains the stock within this safe house, such as food and medical supplies for the Legion forces that pass through. He also maintains weapons and armors in the safe house so that they can be distributed to the Legion forces upon their arrival should the need arise. Atticus is equipped with veteran armor and usually wields a machete or a chainsaw. It's not clear if every quartermaster is a veteran, although it's probable they would be, as it appears that most of these support roles are filled with experienced legionaries. We can see another unusual rank upon entering the inner ring of the fort, the Arena Master. The Arena Master is a legionary who is in charge of their gladiatorial combat arenas. This includes, but is not limited to, outfitting the gladiators, storing their equipment during a duel, setting up matches, and being impressed when you totally body an NCR Ranger. While it is unclear if an Arena Master is a common rank amongst the Legion, it can be assumed that it's somewhat common in larger, long-term encampments, although that is conjecture on my part. The Legionaries are warriors and uphold the warrior culture. Having an arena set aside for troops to test their mettle or try out for a certain team, such as the Praetorian Guard, would be expected of a culture such as this. The only Arena Master we see in New Vegas is a legionary named Otho at the fort. He is a veteran legionary and will be seen wearing veteran armor and wielding a rifle, shotgun, or machete. Now on to what I call the very special ranks. Let's begin with the Legion hit squads, Assassins. Assassins are a special task force that are created when an enemy of Caesar is targeted for dispatch. They appear to be chosen based on ability and not necessarily rank, as each task force is comprised of several legionaries with varying levels of experience, most of which are pulled directly from the infantry. However, sometimes they can include less combat-oriented ranks such as Praetorian Guards or Vexillarius. These squads are equipped with their rank-specific armors and are heavily armed, more so than the standard infantry ranks. They are seen to carry advanced weaponry such as marksmanship carbines, super sledges, and explosives like C4. These squads make even the toughest of wasteland cowboys wary of Caesar's wrath. While assassins may be phenomenal warriors amongst the Legion, they don't hold a Pip-Boy light to the Praetorians. The Praetorian Guard are the pinnacle of the Legion's ideals. Chosen by Caesar himself, each Praetorian is killed and conquered enough to be granted the rank of Centurion. The Praetorians are masters of hand-to-hand combat, and nothing showcases this better than their tryouts. After being chosen by Caesar, a Praetorian candidate must choose a current Praetorian he thinks is weakest, and challenge him to a one-on-one duel to the death, completely unarmed. If he survives, only then can he join Caesar's Praetorian Guard. This ensures that Caesar's Guard are always made up of the toughest individuals in the Legion, and that they never become complacent, lest they are challenged by one of Caesar's chosen. The Praetorian Guard uniform is stripped back to the basics, being similar to a recruit uniform, and dons a crimson cape that covers the upper chest and back of the guardsmen. This lack of armor is not a hindrance, however, and adds to their speed and maneuverability, as the Praetorian Guards primarily operate in close quarters and must be able to close the distance on their target quickly and efficiently. Their primary choice of weapons are ballistic fists, which greatly enhance their punching power, a natural choice for master hand-to-hand combatants. That said, they can be seen using carbines and submachine guns in the event they are chosen for a hit squad. Now, legionaries who show exceptional skill may be selected to join the ranks of the Frumentari. The Frumentari are the spies and deep cover operatives of the Legion. This is a unique role in that it's completely removed from the standard rank and file of the Legion military. Not to mention, its entire existence defies the foundational Legion principles. The idea of the Frumentari is to be flexible, adaptable, and loyal to the orders of Caesar, so much so that they can infiltrate enemy positions and pose as allies for years without becoming corrupted by their ideology. Frumentaries are masters of infiltration, diversion, demoralization, and sabotage. Each Frumentari is selected from the military ranks for their ability to think outside the box in a manner that best serves the Legion. While this may cause them to disobey direct orders, such as in the case of Vulpes and Colta, who, in a battle as an acting Decanus, broke rank to lead his men through a hole in the enemy defenses to capture their chieftain. Caesar spared him from crucifixion because Caesar only cares about one thing: victory. Due to their special nature, Frumentarii are never seen wearing a standardized armor amongst themselves, only wearing whatever armor best serves their mission, such as Vexillarius armor when Vulpes conducted the lottery massacre in Nipton, or NCR armor as worn by Captain Curtis, who is deep undercover at Camp McCarran, or regular clothes in the case of caravanners and couriers. There isn't a specific grade of weapon they use either, for the same reasons there isn't a standard armor. Each weapon will depend on the mission at hand, and they equip accordingly. And now, the top dog himself, Caesar. While most of us know Caesar as the man, in all actuality, Caesar is the title. Should our current Caesar die, the next legionary in line will take his place, becoming the new Caesar, and will be referred to as such by the Legion. Caesar is the man in charge, he who makes the rules and he who breaks the rules. Because the Legion is a slave army, every man, woman, and child within the Legion organization is a slave of Caesar himself. The position of Caesar is a position of dictator. One's accomplishments matter not for achieving this rank, as a Caesar chooses his heir based on who he deems fit to fill his shoes. Our current Caesar, Edward Sallow, chooses Legatus Linnaeus to be his heir, although Linnaeus is stated as having no loyalty to the Legion and only loyalty to Caesar himself. Linnaeus is likely chosen because he is the face of the Legion, its strength, the myth that would unify it after Caesar's passing. I mean, the man literally wears a suit of armor that was crafted after the image of their god. Like, come on. If anyone could hold them together, it's him. Anyways, Caesar's role seems to primarily be that of creator, idealist, and delegator. He determines everything from what and where he wants to conquer next, to what the Legion wears to battle, to how their currency is printed, to their religion, food they eat, wives they get, pleasures they can or cannot enjoy, etc. I think you get the point. He is the god of this bubble he exists in. Caesar doesn't wear any armor, however he does have a unique variant of Legion clothing. This is primarily composed of a long crimson tunic, fastened with a weightlifting belt and covered in wolf fur, donning a big golden brooch with an X at the center. It's interesting to note that Caesar wears cut-off pants under his tunic, and is the only person in the entire Legion to do so. No skirts for this guy. He equips himself with the displacer glove at all times, likely to grant him the opportunity to defend himself should an assassination attempt take place. Although the horde of Praetorian guards and Legion mongrels surrounding him would rip an enemy to atoms before he could even stand from his throne. Nevertheless, it pays to be cautious. The Legion is truly impressive in its scale and efficiency, as shown in this list. Their logistics are undeniably solid, and it's such a shame that they had so much content cut from this game. I can only imagine the depth and scale this faction would have had if the development team would have had a normal development cycle.
Caesar's Legion, the boogeyman of the Mojave, is a brutal, imperialistic faction, guided by the principles of martial excellence and personal sacrifice. They are a fierce and merciless slave army helmed by a dictator, formerly known as Caesar, or Edward Sallow as he was once known. At the time we encounter them in New Vegas, they are locked in conflict with the new California Republic over the lands west of the Colorado River, with their primary objective being the acquisition of Hoover Dam and subsequent retreat of the NCR from the area. As the player character, we can experience 4 endings based on which of the 4 main factions inhabiting New Vegas we choose to side with. 3 of 4 of these endings involve defeating the Legion at the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. This is, however, a gameplay mechanic for story purposes and not indicative of how the battle will actually play out. Caesar's Legion will win the Battle of the Dam and continue on to conquer all the lands of New Vegas. There are several in-game factors that support this conclusion, starting with the state of the factions themselves. The NCR, by the events of New Vegas, are overstretched, demoralized, and nearly cut off from California after the decimation of their supply line through the Divide and the recent disruptions along I-15. On the other hand, the Legion's forces are more unified, better trained, and their morale has never been higher, with legionaries constantly expressing their desire to take the fight to the NCR. As the saying goes, the proof is in the pudding. We could see several instances of the Legion's strength and power over the NCR prior to the events of the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. The Legion were able to sneak into NCR-occupied Searchlight,
completely undetected and unseal nuclear fuel casks within the town, annihilating the town with radiation and removing a key strategic NCR position. This resulted in decreased NCR activity in the area and freed up Cottonwood Cove for occupation. Cottonwood Cove turning into a massive staging area and supply line from the fort into the Mojave. They pressed into the town of Nelson, forcibly removing the NCR, gaining themselves another strategic position along the Colorado. From here, they actively pressed Camp Forlorn Hope, leading to the entire camp becoming demoralized and terrified of Legion invasion.
We're all gonna die out here. They're out there right now waiting for us. Waiting to kill us. We're all fucked. My problem is we're all going to die. We're out of food, we're out of men, and we're out of time. The Legion is right outside waiting to kill us all. Today, tomorrow, it doesn't matter. We're all going to die here. So why don't you just leave me alone? You kidding me, man? How are things? We're all fucked up, that's how things are. Everyone is either starving or dying out here, left out to dry by the rest of the NCR. Fuck this place. I'd rather be anywhere else but here.
They also sent a small detachment, led by Frumentarius, Vulpus, and Colta, to push deep into NCR territory and decimate the entire town of Nipton, causing panic amongst the forces at Mojave Outpost and demoralizing the troops all over the Mojave as they received the news. They even set up a raiding camp southwest of Novak, which was totally undetected by the NCR. Legionaries from this camp invaded Ranger Station Charlie, inhabited by the most elite units in the entire NCR, the Rangers, and wiped them out without a single casualty sustained.
Throw the raiders off. No casualties. In the meantime, patrol's back. They're late. I hope they got a good excuse. What took...
This is a message to the NCR from the Legion. We are coming for you. Run, and we will catch you. Hide, and we will find you. No matter what you do, you are all going to die. We took one of the women alive.
When we look at the NCR, the only victory they have achieved against the Legion thus far was the capturing of a Legion Centurion in an unnamed conflict after the First Battle of Hoover Dam. By the time the game events begin, the Centurion Silus has not revealed any information to his interrogator, nor does he plan to, much to the dismay of the NCR. Without player intervention, Silus remains a prisoner and never spills the beans. This obviously doesn't do the NCR much good, as they do not receive crucial intel in beating back the Legion atrocities. The power of each faction can be seen in their in-game camps and compounds. In Legion territories, legionaries can be actively seen training, sharpening their blades, or instructing the next generation of legionaries. In contrast, the NCR soldiers are seen socializing, drinking Nuka-Cola, smoking cigarettes, and are never seen training or maintaining their weapons. This speaks to the level of preparedness of each army. I would like to bring up the example of the Misfits, a group of NCR troops stationed at Camp Golf, who have remarkably poor combat performance and attitudes. Their acting sergeant can't seem to whip them into shape, and ends up outsourcing this job to the Courier in a side quest.
Oh, hell. What is it now? I've been here since the first push into Vegas. Back in the day, this camp was the hotspot for conflicts with the Legion, Raider tribes, you name it. These days, I spend most of my time trying to beat a little discipline into the soldiers under my command. I've gotten soft with no action. Mostly drill the troops, try to keep the discipline up and combat readiness high. It's not the easiest job in the world. Soldiers without a mission get bored very easily. Still, with the Legion just across the river, we have to be ready. Disappointed. We call them the Misfits for a reason. They're undisciplined, lazy, and they have absolutely no esprit de corps. The squad leader's got some promise, kid named Mags. But as for the rest, I don't see much hope. I'm going to make them shape up if it kills me, though. Or them, for that matter. You're welcome to try. Hell, maybe they'll listen to somebody they don't see as an authority figure. Yeah, whatever.
Examples such as this are not seen in the Legion, as legionaries must either perform or they will die. It should also be noted in the case of the Misfits that the techniques taught to them are remarkably simple and should be basics for any soldier, such as how to breathe when firing and how to cluster grenades properly. Although it's clear and evident that the soldiers of the Legion have vastly superior discipline and martial prowess, strength of the individual is not the deciding factor in war. When it comes to the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, the strategy of each faction must be analyzed, as even the strongest army will fail if its strategy is not effective. This is showcased extremely well during the First Battle of Hoover Dam. The Legion army was led by the Malpais legate, Joshua Graham, its first commander. While a strong warrior, his understanding of strategy and tactics applied to smaller, less advanced tribals and not standing armies. In comparison, General Oliver had the tactical know-how of Ranger Hanlon, who was vastly experienced in warfare against all types of enemies, from tribal raiders to the armies of the Brotherhood of Steel. The Malpais legate strategy was to march his troops along the top of the dam and overwhelm the NCR forces with their speed and tenacity in battle. Hanlon crippled this approach by ordering his sharpshooters to take out Legion commanders in the back row, causing confusion amongst the Legion ranks due to a sudden lack of battlefield leadership. This forced the legate to command his veterans to charge the ridge where the sharpshooters were located. The NCR troops would fall to the side, allowing the veterans to charge into nearby Boulder City, which was rigged to blow with C4 and dynamite. As soon as Legion forces entered the city, the town went up in smoke, dealing a crushing blow to the Legion. This defeat was not taken lightly by Caesar, who saw to it that the Legion witnessed firsthand the price of defeat. In an ironic twist of fate, during the second battle for Hoover Dam, NCR General Oliver implements the exact strategy that lost the Legion the first battle. As Mr. House points out, he wants to overshadow Hanlon's strategic genius of the first battle by beating the Legion in a straightforward slugging match. Oliver's overconfidence and ignorance to his enemy's adaptations have led him into complacency. In contrast, the new legate Linnaeus takes a vastly different approach, studying his enemy in deep detail, learning about their mindset, ability, equipment, tactics, and how to exploit them. The NCR infantry digs in and fortifies their position, placing snipers and key lookouts to eliminate the Legion's leadership, just as last time.
Solway, Courier. How goes the battle in the east? The enemy is much more fortified ahead, and have snipers set up at key positions, which keep our men pinned down. In addition, they've managed to beat back our men emerging from the intake tower ahead and secure it. If we could just get rid of those damn snipers, or release our waiting men in the intake tower, we'd have the manpower to storm their positions. Any assistance you can provide is welcome, and will mean more of our men to carve through the foe by your side.
However, they overlooked a vital component of their position, the dam's intake tunnels. During an NCR run, you have the option to kill all the legionaries in the intake tunnels by activating them. However, it appears that the military isn't aware of their presence there, and only a single engineer knows about these tunnels. These intake tunnels allow the Legion to find their way into the dam's interior, surpassing the front line and surprising the NCR from their rear flank, completely disrupting any chances of reinforcing the dam top. During a Legion run, the player can even open these tunnels to allow for legionaries to reinforce the dam top, allocating enough manpower to totally overrun the snipers' nests and bypass their frontline fortifications.
Ah, the outsider who gained our master's favor. You prove yourself as cunning as the rumors report. My men await in the tunnel below. I'm to divide them between the dam top and the tunnels that lead to the western power plant. Your words have merit. Very well. I shall tell my men to concentrate their efforts here. More than a few if I have my way.
Let's take another look at a prime example of a change in tactics. The Legion forces are now arranged in fire teams, rather than arranging troops in a traditional battle line formation, with the least experienced soldiers in the front, while the most experienced are in the back. Each fire team is comprised of all ranks and led by a senior officer, such as a Centurion. This allows for each fire team to maintain combat effectiveness in the event a senior officer is dispatched and can no longer issue commands, due to most of the squad being experienced soldiers. It's important to note that during the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, several other areas of the Mojave come under fire from Legion forces and auxiliaries. The Great Khans attack NCR's rear flank at the dam top, preventing any reinforcements coming through nearby Boulder City or Ranger Station Alpha. Camp Forlorn Hope is completely overrun by the Legion and likely killed to the last man. Camp Golf also comes under attack, although manages to beat the Legion off their doorstep, likely thanks to the heavy veteran Ranger presence there. Both of these locations are meant to reinforce the dam with troops and supplies. However, the attacks completely cut off their ability to reinforce during the battle itself. Camp McCarran gets assaulted by the Fiends. The monorail is destroyed, preventing the camp from resupplying the Strip. The Strip is attacked by the Omertas and the Brotherhood of Steel, or the Legion, if the Brotherhood was wiped out, takes over Helios 1. This all leads to the final room, General Oliver's compound. The player can see when entering the compound that many legionaries have fallen shortly after entering, speaking to its dangers and effectiveness. However, while it's massively fortified and booby-trapped to the teeth, it would only be a matter of time before the Legion reached Oliver. By nature, the Legion accomplishes its tasks at all costs, including that of human life, and would send wave after wave of troops in here until nothing and no one stood between Linnaeus and Oliver. I am confident that the Legion would have troops to spare as well. There is no evidence suggesting that they would achieve an empiric victory, and based on their strategy, they would likely take the dam with minimal loss of life. It's likely that a significant amount of their casualties would come from clearing Oliver's compound and battling against his personal guard of armored heavy troopers in this small space. But as Oliver does not retreat from here, despite having the means, the battle would end, with him decorating a cross. Suffice it to say, a Legion victory is assured, especially in the case they elicit assistance from the Boomers, the Enclave, fix their artillery weapon, and destroy the Securitrons under the fort. I left these factors out in the main scale, as well as factors relating to the other faction boosts, as they are largely dependent on the player's interactions with each faction and how much they want to help them. If the player didn't exist, it's probable the battle would occur without these factors present. The Legion has just won the Battle of Hoover Dam. What now? What's the state of the Mojave directly following the battle? I plan to elaborate on this further in future videos, but I can say for certain that the Legion will not hold or even fortify the dam. The Legate has the foresight to acknowledge that their forces are better at taking objectives than holding them, and would not want to put the Legion in that position if other options were available. The Legion will likely march across the dam and establish a new fort. The most likely area this would occur is Boulder City, due to the landscape forming a pinch point right in that area. They would be able to fortify it well and receive reinforcements and supplies from Camp Forlorn Hope to the south, as well as all of Arizona to the east. I do not believe that an assault on the Strip would happen right away, as the NCR would have fallen back to Camp Golf and Camp McCarran to regroup rather than vacating the Mojave altogether. The Legion would almost certainly encounter heavy resistance from the NCR as they march north to Vegas. Although the NCR lost the dam, I doubt they would give up Vegas. Not to mention, Mr. House would certainly still be alive and willing to align with the NCR and protect Vegas with every last Securitron at his disposal. All that said,
I believe the Legion could take the city in a matter of months. I'll explore a hypothetical battle for Vegas in another video. In the meantime, I hope this helped to inform you of the true might of Caesar's Legion and the sheer impossibility of an NCR victory. In all honesty, I believe it would take the NCR, Mr. House's entire army of upgraded Securitrons, especially those located under the fort, and all the help of the Vegas factions to defeat the Legion at the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. And even if they were to be defeated, in-game evidence shows that they will return, stronger and wiser. It's only a matter of time before the entire Mojave falls under the banner of the Bull.
Do you know what I love about our slave collars, Lieutenant?
If you love them, maybe you should try one on.
I love how tightly they fit. I train my men to make sure the slave's flesh bulges a bit around the top and bottom. Know why?
It's all the rage in fashion circles?
Not quite. If you fit it just right, their body never gets used to the feeling of wearing it. It cuts in just enough when they swallow or turn their head to remind them who they belong to,
Silus is an acting Centurion of Caesar's Legion, and during the events of New Vegas, an unfortunate prisoner of war. He is being held in a cell by the NCR in their camp at the ruins of McCarran Airport. When we encounter him, he's in a bit of a bind, and to understand his dilemma, we must go back to the events that led him here in the first place. It's unclear whether Silus was born into the Legion or assimilated from one of the dozens of conquered tribes that line the Legion's ranks. What is clear, however, is that Silus was is exceptional. Through bravery and devotion, he climbed his way up the ranks, battle after battle, until he held the esteemed title of Centurion. This title in of itself speaks volumes to the strengths of Silus, as even Chief Hanlon believes there aren't tougher warriors than Legion Centurions, not even his very own Rangers. To complement this, Centurions are also some of the most exceptional leaders in the Legion, just under that of Legates, having spent years leading men as Decani before even being considered for their new roles. Centurions have proven intelligent enough to make sound strategic decisions and bold enough to move on the enemy when the odds are against them. And these tactics, as shown in game, have proven extremely effective.
You think I could get where I was in the Legion army if I feared death? I've led charges against men with guns, carrying only my knife. And I can tell you, it was they who feared me.
It's a modest presence, a single finger of the Legion reaching across the river's narrows. But with me here, it has an iron knuckle.
Prior to his imprisonment, Silus was the head of a Courier, a lethal Legion strike force. The exact size of this unit is unclear in game, but we can assume it's either 100 troops, as the name implies, or that it's around 80, as this was the historical Roman standard. Either way, it's a decent enough force to do some serious damage with. Silus's strike force was primarily responsible for clearing strategic locations from NCR occupation, so that Legion agents could move around freely in the area, likely to gather intel, establish supply lines, and move larger troop units without constant threat of attack, all of which are evident in the Legion staging areas, such as that of Cottonwood Cove. Prior to his capture, Silus's Courier was waiting for Caesar to dispatch them for a specific mission. It's unclear what exactly this mission entailed, but Silus expresses that the nature of it was time critical. When Caesar was supposed to dispatch them, he was struck with debilitating headaches and isolated himself in his tent, refusing to give orders. As such, Silus and his Courier remained on standby for 3 days while Caesar recovered. Once Caesar finally dispatched them, Silus and his men ended up marching right into an NCR ambush, showing they had missed the time-critical window for this mission to be successful. The Courier fought hard and valiantly, but were ultimately routed. Recognizing defeat, Silas's men begin to off themselves in order to avoid capture, just as Kaiser had ordered them to do. Only Silus wouldn't follow suit. He knew he was defeated, but refused to fall on his sword and throw away all he had worked for. He viewed it as a show of cowardice to the enemy and a waste of one of the Legion's best and most loyal soldiers. Recognizing his worth and knowing he had a chance at survival, he surrendered and was soon taken into NCR custody while the blood of his brothers pooled around him. Upon his arrival at Camp McCarran, he glanced upon many faces, the faces of his enemies, with some bearing excitement over his capture, others bearing the scars of painful memories, hurt, hatred, disgust. But one of these faces bared a unique emotion, recognition. As Silus was rushed into his new home, he reflected back to a time long before this conflict had ever begun, before the battle of the bull and bear, to the candid of a young man, a legionary, who was once training to be a frumentari, a spy for the mighty Kaiser. It was in that moment he realized he had laid eyes upon a brother, Kaiser's spy in McCarran. He knew there was a spy here, as his Courier often used the intel received from him to stage attacks against the NCR. And now that Silus recognized him and knew of the spy's high rank in the NCR's military hierarchy, he knew that he would soon be freed. He counted on it. But help never arrived. Days passed. Weeks. Possibly even months. No. For refusing to throw himself away in Kaiser's service, he was abandoned by his brothers, left to rot in this cell indefinitely. But Silus would be free again, and if he couldn't count on his brothers, he'd count on himself. This is the state to which we encounter him during the events of the game. He is being held for questioning by the NCR Lieutenant, Carrie Boyd, who is making remarkably poor progress with him. Even despite being forsaken by his own nation, Silus remains loyal to the end, and refuses to divulge any Legion secrets. One of the remarkable aspects of Silus's personality is that he is acutely aware of the bigger picture, something that likely exists within, but is never expressed by, the other legionaries. Silus recognizes Kaiser's degenerating health and understands that the Legion as a whole is suffering from it. He despises Kaiser and refers to him as a megalomaniacal, self-appointed dictator. However, it's clear and evident that Silus loves the Legion, despite his feelings of its leader. He shows no regrets for any of his actions, no remorse for any of those he's hurt. He's proud of his rank and all the years of hard work he put in to achieve it. He wholeheartedly believes in the Legion's morals and its mission. Furthermore, he understands his true value as a Centurion of the Legion, and dismisses the notion that he's a traitor for disobeying Kaiser, stating that he's useless to Kaiser if he's dead, and that the order to off himself if captured comes out of Kaiser's irrational paranoia, rather than it being a sound strategy. It's remarkable how much insight he has into these various matters, and surprising that he is well educated, despite the lack of priority for this in the Legion. During the game, we can take part in a quest called the Silus treatment, where we can either interrogate Silus for information, or we can help him escape. If we interrogate him, we prove that Kaiser was right to worry about his troops cracking under pressure, as Silus cracks immediately. There are several ways to go about this. The first method is to use speech in order to trick him into telling us about the spy that's planted in McCarran. Alternatively, if the Courier has an intelligence of 8 or higher, we can convince him that we are a Legion assassin sent to dispatch him. This leads to him unintentionally revealing state secrets as he assumes we are in the loop with what he knows. And lastly, we can beat him within inches of his life, which will cause him to cave, stating that he'll tell you what you want to know, as he is dead to the Legion either way. However, if we free Silus before he talks, Caesar will comment on this by stating his approval of our actions, and that he is going to punish Silus for disobeying his orders. This implies that Silus returns to the Legion after escaping. It's also possible that he is on the run, and Caesar is going to deal with him regardless, likely with a Legion assassination squad. Either way, the fate of Silus at the hands of Caesar looks bleak. The world of New Vegas, as with our own reality, is not often filled with happy endings. Unfortunately for Silus, the chances of him having one here are near non-existent. If he never escapes custody, he'll likely be tried and executed by the NCR. But if he does, he'll be hunted down and executed by the Legion. Only in the unlikely event that he escapes after Captain Curtis is dealt with and can't inform Caesar of his escape, will Silus have a chance at life yet again. And I hope he gets that chance, as Silus was one of the best and brightest in the Legion. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I've always believed Silus was a very tragic and underappreciated character. I hope this video helped you to appreciate him just a little bit more. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and until we meet next, Wale Amicus.